All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our work session. We have a few interviews to conduct. We're going to go in the order in which it's listed on the agenda. We're going to start with Peter Swain, looking to be appointed to the Affordable Housing Collaborative Committee. Peter, come on up. Just going to sort of briefly introduce some parameters here. First off, thank you for your interest. We do have your application. If you feel to, tell us anything more about what's there, so we have an idea about you, but if you want to sort of dive into things further, feel free to. Tell us why you think you'd be a good fit in the committee. If you've been following maybe some of the successes or challenges of the committee right now and going forward. And other than that, just anything you wish to touch on. So go ahead.
Gotta press your button.
A red button.
The one on the right.
Button
On the thing.
Right in front of you.
On the box.
There you go.
Got it. All right, thank you. Pete Swain. I would say my primary interest in serving on the committee is based primarily on the history that the Peacedale Congregational Church has with affordable housing. So I imagine most of you are familiar with that, but they were involved from the very beginning with Larry Washburn to create Peacedale House, Peacedale Estates, involvement with Champaign Heights and Fournier. And then subsequently, Peacedale has moved into Habitat and done a lot of things partnering with Habitat. As of yesterday, I was the president there until my term ended, so I feel like a terrific involvement with the church has led me to want to be involved with affordable housing. In terms of my qualifications, I think I'm going to make them fourfold. So first of all is I have been involved as executive director of 2 large resident camps with a tremendous amount of facility work. I'm not at all saying I'm handy. I'm not saying I have expertise, but I do feel like I know sort of the oversight of what facilities look like and kind of bring that expertise to the committee. I've also been involved with quite a bit of nonprofit work. As I said, I was moderator president of our church. I served on a school board. I have been involved with our condo association, also facilities-based Shadow Farm, and a lot of other volunteer opportunities. So I think what that really means in part is that I'll show up for meetings, which is half the battle. And I'll also be willing to do extra work involved with that or whatever subcommittees are involved, et cetera. So I think that commitment to volunteer activity is also a good reason to be serving on the committee. Expertise in facilities, commitment with housing through the church. So I'd say that sort of sums up in broad terms, my expertise. Where do I think the committee sits at this point? Frankly, it was curious looking into it. Your founding document basically appears to be the study that was done in 2005. So I would like to think that you've been keeping things up to speed from there, but it'd be interesting to say, is that still where is that founding document accurate and updated, and what could be done to improve, to update that founding document? I also am really curious about the discussions that have been happening around using currently available space, the 2 schools, Watson, et cetera. I think there's tremendous possibilities there, and I'd be happy to do whatever work could be done to help contribute to that. So it's interesting to see where the committee stands at this point and what can be done. It's great. A tremendous opportunity, I think, here in town to address a really critical need, and hopefully we can move that forward in collaboration with you guys, the state, federal government, et cetera. So, questions, thoughts?
Thank you, Peter. Go ahead.
So you mentioned the 3 properties that we are exploring for repurposing. Did you have a chance to attend any of the meetings? Or I'm just curious about if you have and what your thoughts are.
I followed it certainly through the minutes in the agenda. I haven't attended the meetings,
okay.
And that's obviously a shortcoming at this point. I probably should have been more engaged at that point. I feel like I am stepping off of sort of 3 different things right now that'll give me much more time to be involved with it. So, but I have been following it online, just by the minutes, the agenda, et cetera.
No problem.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
are busy. I just wanted to say that last week, the 29th of January, we had a work session, and they did review all of the 3 options. You might, it was a long meeting, but if you even catch the first 45 minutes, you can at least hear the proposals. But I do think we had a really good conversation and productive. We feel like we're making some progress.
Yeah,
so-
good. It seems that way. And I
Yeah.
think that, again, I think that's a real opportunity.
Not just for you, I like to say it to the whole people, everyone who's paying
Yeah.
attention. It was a great meeting to really understand what's happening if you want to
Good.
catch up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Great. Okay.
One thing that immediately interested me was when you talked about Peacedale Congregational Church. And I'm not sure if you were involved back in the time when the large building, you know, where the elderly people live now, that was originally a project of Peacedale Congregational Church.
You mean Welcome House?
No,
or-
right, yeah, Peacedale Estates.
Yeah, Peacedale Estates, yep.
Right.
Yep.
So I had a very good friend that lived in there for a long time, and it was a wonderful place. And so one of the properties that we have, I'm going to give my standard spiel about the Oliver Watson House, which was given to the town for the purpose of helping the elderly. And so I would love, I know we can't do something like Peacedale House there, but it makes me very happy that you've applied for this position, and hopefully you could, you know, take a special look at that one.
Yeah, sure. I actually think there might be potential on the existing Peacedale House and Peacedale Estates property. I've heard lots of different rumors and thoughts about that floating around, but
Oh, I like that.
I do think there is some potential.
That is such a beautiful property, and
Yeah.
there does seem to be a lot of extra room back there.
Yep, yep. And who knows what's going to be born out of Chris Little's work with the Housing Authority. That, he's
Right.
got some very ambitious plans, and they seem to be creeping forward, but that's certainly going to provide, if it comes to fruition, a lot of additional spaces.
Right.
But it'd be interesting to see what that ultimately gets assigned to. What populations are we serving through Fournier and Champaign Heights?
Right?
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay,
Pete, thanks for coming tonight.
sure, Jay.
I'm really excited that you're here. I've actually, for the audience, I've known Pete for over 20 years.
Yeah, he
The-
was a wee little guy when
a
I first met
wee
him.
little lad
Yeah.
at Peacedale Congregational Church.
Yeah.
Things about Pete that are extremely useful for the Affordable Housing Committee is his extensive knowledge of nonprofits and how to work them successful, especially in the programmatic stance. He was pretty humble himself. He was the executive director of Camp Fuller, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
And what I am excited about your work going forward is the collaboration and the holistic parts of working on a board and changing that into concrete and actionable items. And I think that your words tonight about does the committee itself, the founding documents, live up to what we're committed to now as a town council, which is supplying affordable housing in this town, is just an example of the great place and how well you'll do on the committee. So I just want to say I'm very happy to see that you, and congratulations on your other terms expiring, but I'm looking forward to your work on the Affordable Housing Committee, because the one thing about Pete Swain is he shows up.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. One thing I didn't mention, I'm also a trained mediator and have done mediation in the court system, which I think sometimes when you're working between conflicting issues is a nice thing to be. So, all right, thank you. Appreciate
Thank you,
your
Peter.
time.
All right, next we got Brad Havenor, looking to be reappointed to the Assessment Board of Review. Brad, welcome. And
Thank
this is
you.
an opportunity for you to tell us about your experience, what's going on the board, and if there's anything else you wish to tell us, go ahead.
Yeah, sure thing. This is so. I believe I've served on the Assessment Board of Review since 2012. I think I was appointed in 2012 originally. I was appointed as an alternate, and I served as an alternate for several years. Although the way the board works, we kind of rotate the alternate in as needed, based on expertise and also the capacity of the other, essentially volunteer board members. I know, and I was appointed to a full member just 3 years ago. So, for those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, I think I was appointed by your mother, actually, and Mr. O'Neill, who's sitting in the audience right now, back in back in 2012. But I am by trade a real estate appraiser. My focus is in commercial real estate. I'm coming up on about 20 years in that business. I've been working about the last 7 or 8 years for financial institutions doing commercial real estate appraisal review. So, that's just kind of my base of expertise that I bring to the committee in terms of knowledge of appraisal methodology, and how that might apply to situations that we see before us on the assessment board. The other members of the board, we have a really complementary group of skills. We have a builder who knows a lot about construction cost, real estate, and we have 2 other real estate brokers on the board as well. So between the group of us, I think we bring a lot of knowledge and expertise to the table in addressing questions and concerns that the taxpayers have when they come before us. So that's kind of where I come from. Having been on the committee for a while now, I've been through a number of real estate cycles that we've seen, including through the pandemic with large increases in property values. And I've been through a number of reval cycles as well. So the statistical revaluations, the most recent full reval, and then we've got one upcoming as well. So I've been, I've kind of been around the block and seen the ebbs and flows of what that means for our committee. So sometimes we have very busy years, and sometimes we have pretty relaxing years, and we take whatever comes our way.
All right, thank you, Brad.
No problem.
Any questions for
Happy
Brad?
to answer any questions.
From when you were appointed, nice to meet you, Brad.
Yeah, it's great to meet you too. I'm happy for the opportunity to be here.
Absolutely. And so from your start on 2012 as an alternate to going to be reappointed now, what has changed, or has anything changed, in what you've seen in your workload?
I think, to be candid, it's not a committee, it's not a board that people think about a lot, but I think at times when people's, it's important that the public trusts their local government. And so I think in times when people have stress, whether it's stress about world events or stress about their finances, they find their way to us, and we provide one place where people can kind of challenge what's going on in their local government, and they have an opportunity to be heard. And so, it's an important board that it's important that we treat people fairly and with respect, and we leave people with a sense of confidence that they're treated like everyone else in their community. So I think that we, in the last several years, we've seen higher volumes at times, and that comes from a variety of reasons. And so I think that's one thing that's changed, maybe, is compared to the quieter days, maybe when I first started serving. We've had a little bit more activity, and I welcome it. And I think that it was something we used to do our meetings in a small conference room, and now often we have larger audiences. But again, that all speaks to transparency and accountability of the public. And so I think we welcome the opportunity to do what we do in front of everybody, so that they have a chance to see how we address our business. So that's
Thanks.
one thing.
All right, thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
All right, last up we have Sarah Mariani, looking to be appointed to the Waterfront Advisory Commission. Sarah, thank you for your interest. And if you just want to tell us more about yourself, we have your application, but why you think you'd be a good fit and why you're interested in serving, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sarah Mariani. I have lived in South Kingston now for about 15 years. I'm a URI grad, Marine Affairs, and for the past 15 years I've worked for the city of Newport in the Harbor Masters Department. And I left in 2023, and I thought it was a good opportunity. Then I could kind of put my experience to use here in the town that I live in. So that's kind of how I got to the point where I put the application in. And I spent a lot of time on the pond. My husband and I have a boat and 2 small kids, so a lot of time in the water. And it's such an asset, and I think it's such a special place to South Kingston, and I look forward to helping, keep it that way and maybe even make it a little better for residents and also visitors.
Nice, thank you, Sarah. Any questions?
How do you feel about public access?
I love it.
Good answer.
Working in Newport, that was something I love to do, is to especially people that were new to town, like to show them how they could access the water even if they didn't have a yacht or a boat. They could have a kayak or just go down to one of the access points to enjoy the waterfront. So I love that, and I think it's great for any community.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Sarah? All right, thank you, Sarah.
All right, thank you.
All right, that concludes our interviews. We're now going to jump right into the regularly scheduled meeting. Today is Monday, February 10. It's a little after 7:30, and our first order of business, as always, is Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Next on the agenda is the land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe, whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Council Vice President Marin.
Here.
Councilmember Bergner.
Here.
Councilmember Alley.
Here.
Councilmember Wedgemont.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. It's going to bring us to item 5, approval of minutes of previous meetings.
Motion to approve items 5A, B, and C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Because you weren't on.
Great, right now?
I'm just reminding you,
Oh, thank you for the reminder.
because you look like you're ready.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes 4-0 with one abstention. It's going to bring us now to item 6, the consent agenda.
I'd ask to remove item H from the consent agenda.
Okay, item 6H has been removed from the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion on 6, item A through G?
Motion to approve the consent agenda, items A through G.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, those items pass. It's going to move us to consent agenda item 6H.
I've filed with the clerk and the Ethics Commission a recusal on that matter because the owner, Jennifer Manzo, is a business associate.
All right, do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve item 6H.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes 4-0 with one recusal. That's going to bring us now to, we're actually going to bring up item 10A, a resolution adopting a proclamation in recognition of the Veteran of Foreign Wars Post 916 Auxiliary 100th Anniversary. Tiger Patrick, come on up. If you have anything to say, I'm going to read this proclamation into the record. I'll start with that, and if you wish to say anything.
Public comments after? Okay.
Yeah.
Eric is our president.
Yep.
Recognizing her organization.
So Erica, I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to ask you if you want to come up and say anything. Go ahead. So this is a proclamation recognizing VFW Post 916 Auxiliary 100th Anniversary. Whereas the Veterans of Foreign Wars, VFW Auxiliary, was established in 1914 to serve the veterans of this country and our communities in honor of the sacrifices and commitment of every man and woman who has served in uniform. Whereas the VFW Post 916 Auxiliary was founded on February 14, 1925 by 23 inaugural members. The first auxiliary president of VFW 916 was Sarah Stedman, mother of VFW Post 916's first commander, Oliver Stedman. Over the years, hundreds have joined their ranks to support vital programs in our community. Whereas the VFW Auxiliary is one of the nation's oldest veteran service organizations, and our members are the relatives of those who served in a location of foreign conflict. Whereas the VFW Post 916 Auxiliary has raised thousands of dollars and volunteered hundreds of thousands of hours for local and national charities over the years. Whereas the VFW mission statement is to serve veterans, the military, and communities, while also advocating for veterans' rights. Now, therefore, we, the Council of the Town of South Kingstown, hereby recognizes and celebrates February 14, 2025 as the Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 916 Auxiliary 100th Anniversary in the Town of South Kingstown. Now, it's a privilege to be able to present this to you. You guys do a ton of work for the community here, and I want to thank you for that, and it's really proud moment for the council here to be able to acknowledge the 100th anniversary, so please keep up the good work. We know you will, and you do so much for our community, so thanks again, but I do want to formally...
Trade in a minute. I'm gonna come get it in just
Oh, all
a
right,
second,
yeah,
because
go
we're
ahead.
gonna trade. Oh, gosh, she's got something. I do. So yes, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Erica Westbrook. I am the current president
You need to-
for,
Is your microphone on?
I'm standing back because I don't want to scream in it. I'm the current president for the William G. Fournier VFW Post 916 Auxiliary. It is an absolute honor for me to serve as the organization's president. We do a lot of work, and we are so grateful and thankful for the support from the community here in South Kingston and surrounding areas. So I do have a couple of things that I would like to give you. We, as a tradition, our national president and our state presidents, they each get to design a pin and choose their own theme for the year. So I actually have our national president's pin to present to you. It is a Tree of Life pin. At the bottom, you'll see they have the poppies at the bottom of the pin, and then the green leaves. Her theme is From Our Roots to Our Branches, supporting our veterans. And our current state president, Stephen Doherty, is a Navy veteran who actually joined the auxiliary on his wife's eligibility. I also have his pin to present to you, and his theme for the year is Allegiance to Our Veterans. So we're going to trade.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay, can I start public?
Tiger, go ahead. We're still here for you.
No roasting.
Hi, Tiger Patrick, Joe Patrick.
Tiger, this is to this item, right?
I'm sorry?
This is to this item, right?
Oh, no, I thought this was part of public comment.
We'll be there rather quickly, but
Yeah,
if it's
okay.
related, if it's
No, I know,
related.
I just didn't want to come up twice. No, I don't need to, she spoke for her organization, so we're good. I'll come back.
All right, we'll get there rather quickly. All right, that's going to move us now to, we're going to move up Town Manager's Report, Item A, Update on School Building Committee and School Facilities Project. Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. Under the Town Manager's Report, we have several things, but we're just going to address 12A, which is the update on the School Building Committee and School Facilities Project. Last Thursday, the School Building Committee, of which I am part of, we've been meeting at least twice a month for the past 2.5 years, and we're at the point where, we're getting some very detailed briefings by Left Field and I was just advised that the two representatives from Left Field that were going to come here and brief the council are coming in a half hour. So do you wish to hold it? Or would
Yeah,
you
we
like
wish to hold it. Okay, that's now going to move us up to public comments. So Tiger, invite you to come on up. We're going to do public comment for a 30-minute segment. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak to the council on any item whatsoever, feel free to come on up. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes. That clock is going to begin counting down once you begin your comments, and we also ask that you introduce yourself. But with that said, Tiger, go ahead.
Hi, where's the clock? Last time I was here, Susan had to yell at me. Oh, I see it? Okay, cool. Hi, Joe Patrick, Tiger Patrick, Post Commander, across the street, VFW, longtime resident. First, before I begin, I wanted to apologize for my Veterans Day parade ceremony terribleness. I was the worst MC ever. Deb, right after you and I talked about my sister and family stuff, I started to corral people to get ready for the parade, and I saw my niece that I haven't seen in years for the first time, and not only that, but her daughter, who I had never seen before, and my mind went, pfft, and I forgot everybody's name. I'm sure our grant from Narragansett's going to be terrible this year because I mispronounced all of their names, introducing them. And I also introduced Tony Fiella, who I've known for 50 of my 60 years, as Charlie, and so I'll never live that one down when I see him. But I wanted to say thank you for those of you who came, and also Chief, while I'm here. I was doing my 9/11 walk, and walking across the George Washington Bridge to 9/11, a crash site at their Ground Zero. And our tradition that we had created here went on without me. Chief Monahan and Tammy over at Broad Rock Middle School bird-dogged it, and they had a great day driving to each of the schools and high-fiving with the kids. So thank you very much. And I know it's a big deal for him, but it was a real big deal for me. I also wanted to announce that one of our own, Dave Cannon, who lives on Winter Street here, was our VFW Rhode Island Teacher of the Year, and he's up at National in competition there. So we're real excited about that. He's a history teacher over at Narragansett School, and he does a great job over there. So fingers crossed. We'll know in a couple weeks if he's won or where he finishes. Rhode Island's never had a winner, so we're real excited about that. I wanted to thank the Elks Lodge, who are having a veteran service officer come to their lodge on Saturday. Steve Octaviano. Have you ever worked with him? With Steve? Steve Octaviano. He works for the VA, actually.
Yeah.
Great guy. And so they're having a resource center, and it always helps them more. And so that'll be 10 to 1 at the Elks. And so thank you very much, South Kingstown Elks, for doing that. 10 to 1 is an important time for us. We started with an idea to have a resource for all caregivers, specifically thinking about spouses and parents of the GWAT veteran coming back home a little jacked up in various, with PTSD or other situations, and it evolved into a larger event for all caregivers. So if you are just a civilian and you're caring for your parents or your loved one with a physical, mental, or aging disability, this is an event for you to meet the resources that are out there available to you through the state. The Lieutenant Governor and the Director of Rhode Island Mental Health, Director of Health, it's gotten bigger than I intended. So I'll put out on Facebook again, but it's at CCRI on Friday, February 21st from 10 to 1. It'll be a resource fair. One of the things that I'm doing for a lot of people that I know that can't go, they're giving me their questions through email or texting, and I will go find the resource provider and videotape interview the person that would help them, and then I'll post it publicly to help others who can't go. Unfortunately, a lot of the challenges for folks who are caregivers, legally caregivers, they can't get away. They don't have respite and they're struggling, so I'm trying to help build a bridge. I took care of my grandmother her last 3 years as a caregiver, so I know. The last thing I wanted to bring up and say thank you for recognizing our auxiliary for their 100th year. It's a rare milestone. There's only one other in our state that's a little older by like months. I mean, they got founded right when it started, and they've been strong the whole time. And even though she's a Marine, you know, I couldn't do a lot of things without Erica in supporting us. And so tomorrow at 6 o'clock, we will have a formal presentation of proclamations. We have some VIPs coming to present them. And then we will have, immediately following that segment, so about 6:30 or so, we will update our memory board, both in our auxiliary and our member side of members who have passed away, including Billy Forbes and Hilly Munson. Judy will be there for Hilly to place his name, and Sandy will be there for Billy. And so Erica didn't know that we were doing that. It's kind of a big deal. So we invite you to come. I know you get to do these boring meetings all the time, but it's also good to get out there. That's really all I have, but I wanted to say thanks to Nicole and her team at the clerk's office, and also Wendy down in your tax assessor's office. They were able to provide me with a list of all the veterans in our community, residents who get a tax break based on Veteran 214, and gave me their addresses so I could send them a mailer about the caregiver event that's coming up. And so they're awesome, man. You got some really good people here. I see Luke's not here. He's probably passed out in his office. Is he wearing those brown shoes? Because we wanted to take up that man wears those shoes out and he still wears them. But he's one of our, he's a shining star and he does a great job. And I love to kid him because he takes it and he never says anything back. He might plot things about me, but I haven't seen it yet. But again, congratulations on becoming a father, Rory. My first thought was, oh,
But
God.
not yet, Tiger. Hasn't happened yet.
But as another, last thing we need is another lawyer named McEntee in our town, right? And so, anyway, congratulations, my brother, and hopefully I can see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiger. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Feel free to come on up.
Good evening, Mr. President, councilors. Randy Noka, tribal elder of the Narragansett Indian Tribe, Narragansett Tribal Nation. Tribal name is Paponi McQuasham, which means winter wolf translated. I know it's been a little while since I've been here and presented to the council. We appreciate the opportunity. Not sure how many in the audience, certainly I remember not that long ago, or certainly why I was here for a few occasions was Tom Found area in the South County Hospital proposing to pave over the recreational area, or that's what I'm calling it. More important to me, it's a culturally sensitive area of the Narragansett Tribal Nation, which includes burials. I know the council came to find that out in the information that was looked over and considered when the town, the council did what I certainly consider the right thing and turned down that proposal of trading land and allowing the paving over of that property. I just wanted to come tonight and share a few things that has come to my attention, or maybe I'm wrong, but that the hospital's efforts of trying to get adjacent land and the building for additional parking spot, it may have fallen through or whatever, I'm not sure. Perhaps I'm talking out of turn, but if that's the case, comes to mind that they may pursue that same opportunity again of paving over that area. And I found it just very disturbing at that time, and would find it equally disturbing, if not more so, if that were to be given consideration again. I'm not saying it is, I'm just bringing it to the attention of the council. That's what I came to understand, that that opportunity may not be there anymore. And certainly I wouldn't want it to go back to that consideration of paving over. Speaking of that land, that area, that culturally sensitive area, I don't want to look at it as a recreational area. I know it's still a ball field. I mentioned this one other time. On occasion, summertime, I see young ones out there playing ball, and I don't know if it's used throughout the season as or just a practice area, but personally I find it disturbing that anything is done on that property, especially in that way, when we all come to know what that property holds, and then more importantly, the burials. So I would ask the council, I asked it some time back, and bring it again as a consideration. At the very least, take down the ball field, the dugouts and the backstop and whatever, take away that use as being a ball field, and perhaps reach out to the Narragansett Indian Tribe and see what they may want to do there, if anything. I'm not speaking for the tribe, I'm speaking as a tribal elder of the tribe. It just, again, it's not all the time, but on occasion I'm going down Route 1 and look over there and see young ones out there playing ball. I'm not disparaging them in any way, and I know young ones should be playing out and having fun or whatever, but there's a sensitivity that needs to be had and exercised over that land. So that is one thing I did want to mention, and I'd be more than happy to help dismantle and take down some of those things that have it be a ball field right now. But again, I welcome the opportunity to reach out to the tribe. There is also a thing I acknowledge and respect the council for, you have a land acknowledgement statement. Not many towns do that. We know the history of this country and what happened, at least some of us know. Some don't want to know it. Some, we got critical race theory thinking and folks that want to have that historical perspective not ever taught in school. We know what happened in this country, and lands were taken, lands were through debauchery, trickery, whatever the case would be. What is now southern New England was in large part Narragansett Nation territory. With the land acknowledgement statement, I did want to mention this, and I appreciate that that statement is part of your opening ceremonies when you have your meetings. Not many towns do that. If it could be tweaked ever so slightly, the unceded Aboriginal territory of the Narragansett Tribal Nation, I can present this in writing if it should be more formal, but I'd like to see that language tweaked into it. The unceded Aboriginal territory of the Narragansett Nation. I don't know if the solicitor would have thoughts on that, but like I just said, we all know if common sense and honesty arises, we all know what happened in this country and what happened to the Aboriginal people, what happened to my ancestors. So it's just a small step in a continuation, perhaps, of doing the right thing. The council did the right thing, stopping the paving. The council can give whatever consideration to what I present tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to present that.
Thank you, Randy. If you'd like to discuss, we should add it to the agenda.
I wasn't going to discuss. I was just going to say, if you would just email the revision that you would like, we could take that up. I just was explaining how, because you said
Yeah, we could.
Language. It was about the language.
We need to have it go to our town solicitor, our lawyer to review, and then perhaps us to sort of take action to include it or expand on what the acknowledgement statement already says.
Absolutely. I didn't know if there was a formal process, but being I was here tonight, I figured I'd mention that. But I'll submit something in writing to the specific language.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not. My name is Bella Noka, Narragansett Tribal Elder, Mishki Wupai, Red Wind, my traditional name. I guess we'll go back to back because the words have to be very strong and lay on your hearts very, very strongly, because I have a lot of sleepless nights just knowing what is present there and people's plans for that land. And I hear through the grapevine every day that there are plans. And I don't know who may get offended, but at the risk of anyone being offended, sitting there and look at the Gaza, seeing things play out in broad daylight in front of our very eyes, the trauma and everything that's taken place and all those who perish on those grounds is the same thing that happened to my people. The exact same thing. And I don't see us going and building or creating some beautiful, luxurious hotels over all those ancient ones, all those beautiful babies' bodies. But that's what has been done all around here. People don't care. All their homes are built over our ancient ones. If we even thought of building or playing baseball in Swan Point, there would be a problem. The mention of it would be a problem. I want you to go into your hearts and your souls and see that it would be a problem. The gentleman right there who's very busy at work at the table, I don't know his name. Mike Osillo, the town solicitor, I hope it falls on his mind and in his heart as well. Because there is a respect whenever you go into a room, when someone is speaking and they are speaking from spirit. When there is an elder speaking, there is a respect that is always given. Unfortunately, I don't see it everywhere. I just want you to know I value all of you. I've had the opportunity to speak in front of you before, and I listen, and you listen, and I like that you pay attention. But the hospital bowed out for whatever reason. And if they bowed out, it was simply because there was a lot of information given. The gentleman right here who had shared that there was 99.9% chance of the ancient ones being there. Everyone knows it. You have mothers and grandfathers and aunts and uncles who died. Do you want my kids playing football, baseball, lacrosse on their graves? No, each and every one of you will stand up and would not allow that because of your love for your people, your love for your mothers, your brothers, your wives, those who have left before you, that left a lot of pain in your heart and soul. You honor them. And why would we not honor ours? There is something wrong with a heart that will believe that that couldn't be so. So I am done with my words, but I do hope that they fall very heavy on your heart tonight. May you think about it. May you feel it. Because if you don't, you need to question your own humanity. Aho.
Thank you, Bella. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak? I just invite you to come on up.
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. Just a procedural question, Mr. President. The last meeting, I was hoping to speak, but you properly closed it down 11 o'clock, and you voted to continue the January 27th meeting to tonight. I'm the only one here that was waiting that evening to have been heard, so I don't know what the rules and regs were, but you did continue the meeting. So hopefully I might get a few extra minutes. I just had a couple of things I wanted to say up front, but I wanted to hear what the building situation was, so I'd like to come back later. So I don't even know what public comment one we're on tonight, but I was here early to be on the January 27th.
So Jim, we're going to limit public comment to one time per go. If you want to wait till after the presentation by the school building committee, I'd advise you to wait till after that. That's how we're going to run this meeting.
All right, I will do that. I'd appreciate it if you were a little liberal on my comments later. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak? All right, we're going to move on to item 9, public hearing. 9A is a public hearing relative to proposed amendments to the town's zoning ordinance, Article 8, signs, Section 802, signs permitted in any zoning district without permits, as shown on Exhibit 1 attached here 2. Mike Ursillo, what do we got?
So as you may recall, our political sign ordinance, which hasn't been enforced for many, many months, had language in it relative to when signs, how many days or weeks prior to an election signs could appear, when they had to be taken down, etc. Based on a Supreme Court decision, local municipalities do not have the authority to basically tell individuals when they can put up a political sign and for how long they can keep it there. So the ordinance, and also you, the council, received a letter from the ACLU with regard to this ordinance, suggesting that we should take a look at it and make revisions. We did do that. The amendments that you have before you this evening were shared with the ACLU. They are fine with these amendments. They offered to be here this evening if we thought that that would be a good idea for them to testify. I advised them that our office would be advising the council to adopt the amendments. I was pretty sure that that would happen, so I'm not sure if anyone's here this evening from the ACLU. But basically what we can do is we can say signs cannot be placed on public property, on, telephone poles, rights of way, traffic signs, utility poles, those types of things. And they cannot be placed on an individual's private property if they're going to interfere with traffic in some way. Let's say there's a corner lot and the sign goes all the way out to the edge, makes it impossible for someone driving to see cross traffic. Those are the type of regulations which are content neutral that we are allowed to regulate. Anything in terms of what's on the sign, how big the sign is, how long the sign stays up, we are not able to regulate along those lines. So again, the amendments that is before you this evening basically shows stricken out language, which is, in our opinion, not acceptable under the law, leaves in the language that is acceptable, and I would recommend that after public hearing, you consider adopting this amendment.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any questions for Mike?
I just want to say thank you for doing this. I know that we didn't enforce but the public didn't know that we weren't doing that either. So I'm glad that we're going to just fix it so that it aligns with the practice in the ordinance. But I had a couple of feedback a resident sent me, and I just wanted to read the changes or suggestions so that people could think about them. I need 1 second. One of them relates to a stone wall. Like, I think it sounds like, I don't know what the right word is, the limit of the delineation between what's public and private, that buffer. 1 second. And then the other one.
Maybe that constituent was talking about the fact that there is a strip of land that's adjacent to every street that the town actually owns, which many times people, mow the lawn there, and there's a mailbox, et cetera. But so placement of whether or not a sign is placed in that area or not would be up to the building official in terms of a zoning enforcement action. If in fact something like that happens, I think that would have to be determined on an individual case-by-case basis.
Okay, so that was what they said. Add for clarification, any sign placed next to a stone wall along a town right-of-way shall be deemed on public property and therefore subject to removal.
So the ordinance says the sign shall not be located upon any public right-of-way nor upon any public property. That's about as broad, I think, as we can make it.
Okay.
And again, when it comes down to a specific case, we'd have to make a determination because that right-of-way narrows and widens depending on where it is. If you're on South Road, it's much narrower than if you're, on Tower Hill Road, right?
There are a number of those old New England rock walls that are actually within the public right-of-way.
Sure.
The other piece of feedback was this: signs found on public property will be removed by the building inspector's office at their convenience and stored at town hall for retrieval. Is there a process that we want to outline, or is that not a good idea?
My understanding is, and Jamie can certainly address it, I believe that's exactly what happens, right? That basically they're kept and the owner is asked to come pick it up.
That's correct. That's the current practice. We store them by the dumpster. We don't have a designated bin, but that's kind of the standard practice, how we
Right.
operate.
They were just suggesting that we include that language.
Well, my thought would be that would be limiting. In the event a more convenient spot comes about, the ordinance would limit you to have to use that. So
Okay.
that would be limiting to an extent, right?
A specific location on the town hall property, I would agree, would be limiting.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, it's a good thing to bring up for sure. I don't think it's necessary to actually write that into the ordinance, especially since it's our practice anyhow.
The state has a similar practice with public's right of way on
does.
state roads.
I think this covers all the bases. That's my opinion about this.
We just have to have people follow it.
Yep.
Mike, First Amendment law is very technical. It's always evolving, always Supreme Court cases in this area that sort of create or establish new current law. So if you could, I'd like to have you sort of explain some of the basics here as to, putting up a political sign is a form of expression or speech, which is, can you walk us through a lot of this?
It is, and it doesn't even have to be a political sign per se. Unfortunately, people have the right to put up or post some kind of sign that has language we may not all agree on, speaking out against on any issue, whether it's a political issue or a non-political issue, as long as it's on their property and it's not interfering with public right of access, et cetera, they have the ability to do so. There's actually a Rhode Island case recently in one of our northern municipalities where a town had to pay $25,000. An individual had a sign up there about Donald Trump and about Biden, and some people didn't like the fact that it was so monstrous in size. It was the entire side of a garage, and they didn't like what the content of the printed material on the sign was all about. But again, under our rule of law, the First Amendment protects all types of speech, other than the, you can't scream fire in a crowded theater type speech. But that aside, we are bound as a municipality to regulate things which are what we call content neutral. Again, meaning we can't outlaw specific phrases, words, or whatever in a sign. We can't tell people what they can or cannot build in terms of a sign on their property, as long as it doesn't turn into a building or an accessory structure or something like that. Therefore, the ordinance that's in front of you does the types of things that we can control. You notice it talks about the sign being constructed of durable material, because that could be a public safety hazard if it blows away or causes some kind of an accident or something like that. Those are the content neutral type things that we can control without violating First Amendment rights of speech and content of the actual sign.
So by the ordinance that's in place prior to any adoption of this amendment here, that would be some sort of content restriction because it places limitations on the duration of time that political signs exclusively can be erected and not?
Yes,
can you
that is exactly correct. By saying that you can only display your First Amendment rights for 14 days after an election or 60 days before an election, that has been deemed a violation of First Amendment rights, because your expression of your rights is being limited by saying you can only keep that sign up for 14 days.
So this is, go ahead.
That particular issue was the context for the ACLU's initial contact with us,
That is
because the ordinance as it exists limits excessively the amount of time that people can put up signs. And there was a case in Pawtucket in 2022 where the court essentially said you can't limit that.
Yeah, and again, a fine had to be paid. And the other thing, again, and this was important in that other case, this ordinance said the sign could not exceed 16 square feet in area. So, basically 4 by 4. Can't do that. If you want the whole side of your garage, you can do that.
So this is an issue not just cities and towns of Rhode Island are facing, but this is a nationwide?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
city councils, town councils across the country are all sitting with potentially
Well,
a draft to amend their ordinance that relates to political signs.
I'm only going to speak to South Kingstown and be sure that South Kingstown is in compliance, so we are not liable for any kind of a lawsuit.
Okay, and just to be clear, just so I understand this right, in order for our current ordinance to be declared unconstitutional, someone would have to bring an action and a court would have to declare it unconstitutional.
That's correct, and with those types of actions come the payment of attorney's fees
So in the
to
event
the other side.
we were subject to such a suit and we fought it and we lost, we would have to pay attorney's fees to the other side.
That is totally correct.
And if that were to happen, our success rate is low in your opinion.
Yeah.
This would not pass constitutional muster.
It definitely would not. There's no question because of not only the U.S. Supreme Court, but also courts here in the state of Rhode Island that have ruled on this.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Do we have an easy button?
Well, it's a public hearing, we have to hear from the public,
Yep.
right?
All right, so this is a public hearing. If anyone in the audience wishes to speak on this item, I invite you to just come on up. Just like before, we just ask that you introduce yourself, and we'll limit you to 5 minutes. So with that said, first come, first served, come on up.
Brett Harrington, Wakefield. The only question I have about the signs is, when you talk about the positioning of the signs, you know, where you live, your property ends, and then you have state property. So signs are not allowed on state property, correct?
Correct.
All right. The town roads, I'll use 108. If you live on 108 and you have a property there, so I'm asking this question, I don't know if you know the answer or not. Right where your property meets the asphalt of the road, is that your property line? Or does the state own any of that?
So
For
here's-
eminent domain or anything like that?
I certainly can't answer that, but I could tell you in general that 999 times out of 1,000, the property owner does not own to the asphalt.
Yeah, I didn't
The
think so.
right-of-way is always generally much wider than the actual road. As a practical matter, when you ride down the road, everyone's lawn goes to the asphalt,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah, yeah.
And the reason that's fine is because you cannot adversely possess property against the state or a municipality. So the fact that you maintain it and mow it and take care of it doesn't make it yours after 10 years because you can't.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. But you technically could not put a sign on the part of the land that is owned by the state.
Technically correct.
All right,
Yes.
thanks. Just make sure that's...
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this item?
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. Question for Mr. Osillo. When I first ran for office back in 2000, first people I contacted were the telephone utilities. And they said, you're always safe because we put that pole on public property right where it meets private property. So always, now the poles will always move around depending, but is there anything, because I had signs picked up the last few times that were behind that pole, I thought safely, on properties that I'd used over the last 24 years, mostly running for office. So I just didn't know, what do you do about that?
You know, Jim, I think, again, it's going to come back to that case-by-case approach, because most utility poles are on public property. I mean, you need to get an easement if the utility company is going to want to put it on private property. So the fact that the ordinance says you can't put it on utility poles, I think we're good with that. Because it would be a very rare exception that it would be on private property. In terms of how far back you had it from the utility pole, I am not aware of that. I do know this. Our advice always to the building official is, if in doubt, leave it there. That's our advice. It's sort of like when you get pulled over for speeding. The police officer has the opportunity to give you a warning and not a ticket. So.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this? All right, seeing none, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, the public hearing is now closed. Do I hear a motion on item 9A?
So I just want to say that I feel like I'm happy, I think this is the right change. Two things. I think we should figure out a way for candidates to take their signs or be contacted when they're constantly in the wrong spot, because this season, the town staff, our resources were spent chasing signs in the wrong spots, and it was repeatedly happening, and I feel like Jamie Gorman does a great job and does a lot of different things, and his staff is running down Route 1. Jim was on Route 1 pulling signs. We need to have a better mechanism of, that's not what, that, to me, I think if you're going to run, you run and you follow the practicum of the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, but that didn't happen in the town staff. There was one near Duncan on the way to
Point of
Route
order,
1.
Mr. President.
No.
Is this the time of discussion, or is this the
No.
vote?
Hold on, finish out. You can finish it out. Go ahead.
Is this discussion?
It's fine. She can finish it out.
Do you have a problem with what I'm saying?
No. I was
So-
just I thought we were on to the voting part of it. My apologies.
No, because we can amend, we can make any amendments and changes if we wanted.
Understood. Thanks.
So,
My apologies.
Yeah, once a meeting is closed, the council now is able to discuss amongst themselves. It just means no more public input.
Understood. I'm sorry, Councilwoman Bergner. I was just
no
trying-
problem. So I feel like that was an issue, that there were signs in dangerous locations on Route 1 multiple times, and to me, the town staff should not be babysitting candidates who don't know how to follow where the signs are, so I don't know how we do that. I don't know if we collect a phone number when people file for office, and we can use that so that Jamie and his staff isn't hunting down. We do, but we don't call. We send our own staff out. How do you feel about the staff resources being used to chase signs?
With respect to the ordinance, I mean, I don't think there's any language we should add to the ordinance to sort of combat some of those concerns. I think that that's sort of like a discretion of the manager to sort of, compel the employees under his supervision as to, how to act, how to sort of enforce the ordinance. So we expect that any ordinance that is existing, unless that the council has decided not to enforce it, that it should be enforced. And those responsible for enforcing it should enforce it. I mean, we shouldn't have to, potentially amend an ordinance to add further language as to, how aggressive we want to enforce. The fact that it's existing on the books, we expect it to be enforced, and I think it has been enforced. So I don't have an issue with, the lack of enforcement here, non-issue for me. I think that, we should take up the ordinance at hand here, tackle the unconstitutional issue that's been brought to our attention, and move on.
It's not a lack of enforcement, it's the fact that resources of the town are being used and deployed to circle a very large geographical area to collect signs that people don't know where to put. So I'm just making that point. And my other point is, I want to recognize that it was a resident who advocated for their rights and brought this to the attention of the ACLU, and that resident should be commended for recognizing what the issue was and proactively working to address it. So that doesn't often happen, and I just want to encourage people who are unclear on how to do that. They felt like that the sign ordinance was a disadvantage to candidates because of the 60-day rule, and if you didn't have a primary or whatever, you couldn't get your sign out, so they couldn't market themselves as well as anyone who was in a primary, because that was 60 days before September. So I just want to recognize the work. It was Alex Petrucci, and he did a really nice job of advocating for change for all people, and that was a good thing.
All right, thank you, Deb. Do I hear a motion on 9A?
Motion to approve item 9A and the amendment to Section 802 of the ordinances as indicated in Exhibit 1 to the agenda.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to move us to new business. Is school building committee ready? If not, we can hold off. Does not appear that left field is present.
We're
right.
waiting on one member of left field, expected here at 8:25, so if we can give 5 more minutes, that'd be
All right,
great.
yeah, we'll continue on. All right, it's going to move us to item 10, new business. Item B, Jamie Gorman, come on up.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. With respect to agenda item 10B, we're requesting authorization to award contract to Alliance Restoration LLC to remediate property violations associated with 163 Oakwoods Drive. The total cost for remediation is $10,485.76. And just to summarize the conditions on the property, there's accumulation of debris, specifically tires, car parts, appliances, unregistered vehicles throughout the yard. The remediation is referred to as a clean and lien, so after the removal of the debris, a lien will be filed against the property and land evidence for all associated costs with the cleanup. The remediation is authorized through order of the Municipal Housing Court, and it should be noted that the same property has been subject of similar judgments both in 2016 and 2022. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you, Jamie. Go ahead.
Mr. President, I had to recuse myself from item 10B.
All right. Any questions for Jamie? All right, do I hear a motion on item 10B? Is this an abstention or a recusal? Okay. We got a motion.
Motion to approve item 10B.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes 4-0 with one recusal. It's going to move us now to item C. Thank you, Jamie. Item C, Ken Burke, you in the audience? All right. Jim Manny, we're going to go to you to just talk about this one briefly.
So as we have been made aware, and everyone knows, the 250th anniversary of the United States is approaching us in 2026. And the state of Rhode Island is creating a committee to, similar to what our 300th anniversary committee did here in town. And they requested that most cities and towns come up with their own ad hoc committee to commemorate this event and contribute to the state anniversary committee. So Ken Burke was the one that he came to the town, and he would be the chair of this ad hoc committee. Terry Murphy, who's not here tonight, she's out of state, would be the liaison to the committee. And the proposal is to have 3 events that would commemorate South Kingstown's contribution to the Revolutionary War. Just as an example, the Kingston Library is really a historic site. George Washington went there on his way to meet the French in Newport, and so that right there, that's why it's called Little Rest, because he stayed there in that area. So these are all little things that I think would really contribute to the effort by the state to have this event. As another note, the Kingston Free Library was one of 5 state capital, well, I don't know what they would call it back then.
Locations of
but it
the
was
rotating, yeah.
Yes, the rotating state house or colonial colony house. So every county had one. That was the one. And if you go upstairs, you could see where there's a meeting room similar to this. Pretty interesting place. So that's one example of what the town could contribute to that. And so I think it would be a good thing to support. And once again, we'll have more of a briefing once Terry comes back and Ken comes to the meeting.
All right, thank you, Jim. Do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 10C.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. All right, now we're going to jump to Town Manager's Report, item A, update on School Building Committee and School Facilities Project. Jim, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll give a brief summary on why I felt this needed to be addressed tonight in person on the town manager's report with the representatives that we've assembled here in Town Hall tonight. Just to reiterate, for the past 2.5 years, I've served in my capacity as town manager on the school building committee. This is pre-vote, so it goes back quite a ways for the new high school. School building committee usually meets every other week. We started off every week, but it's an important committee that the town council appointed, and we've made a lot of progress in helping get moving this project to the finish line. But last Thursday, there was a meeting, and the representatives who are here tonight, and I'll introduce them in a minute, from Left Field, Studio Jade, brought up the point that due to circumstances beyond anyone's control, that the date to open the new high school would most likely be postponed from September of 2027 to January of 2028. And those, as I usually do, I briefed the council shortly after those meetings, and I contacted each member of the council individually just to make them aware of that. And universally, a lot of questions came up. Why? What happened? What does this mean? And so forth and so on. So I felt that this was a time to assemble the people that are working on this project, our paid consultants, and you can ask questions if you'd like. So Phil Conti, who's been with us from day one from Studio Jade, is represented. Kate Turner from Left Field is here. Jim Rogers from Left Field. And Kate Massinati, who's also the school building committee chair, is here. But the three consultants who represent architects and project managers will be here to address any questions you have. So I would ask if Mr. Rogers, Ms. Kate, and Kate Turner and Phil, if you could come up and just answer any questions you could ask by the council.
Thank you. Again, quick introduction. My name is Kate Turner with Left Field. Last time I was in front of this group, we talked a little bit about the value engineering, the status of the schematic design estimate, and the steps we needed to take in order to move this project forward. So if anybody's been paying attention to local government or federal government, things are volatile at the moment, which is why we came in front of you guys with an estimate that was above what we had originally anticipated and had to go through cost savings measures. So with that came a pretty good amount of time that it took to go through that process. And you'll see that here on the screen between the original project schedule and where we ended with our final approval date for the value managed schematic design to bring us back into our budget range. So we did lose about 2 months there. So what that does is it's got quite a bit of a waterfall effect on the rest of the schedule. So DD pushed out, design development pushed out significantly as well. And then early bid packages is really where we're starting to see the biggest impact here. So our early bid packages are how we were looking to start construction early. That is our site work package, that's our structural package, that's the things that we need to do to really get in the ground and get going as early as possible. Those are things that the architects are releasing before they're completely done with the entire design. So we highlighted that date because we cannot start construction, we cannot go in front of the local approval boards, we cannot go in front of planning and zoning without those documents. So that push really was a waterfall effect to be able to get us in the ground. So it pushed us about 3 months, just shy of 3 months, to get us into the ground. So you'll see the substantial completion date. Right now, we are tracking at 10/5/27. So the January date that we're talking about is really relating to when is the first time we're going to get students in the building. So substantially complete on 10/5 means at that point we're commissioning the building, we're doing punch list, we're moving furniture, and we're installing all of the AV and technology, and teachers are starting to move into their classrooms. So to this point, between when we got our schematic design estimate, we knew we had an issue. We started the value management process. We recognized that this was going to take time. So since then, we've really been doing a lot of different schedule studies as to how do we still maintain the first day of school as, having a new building on the first day of school. And with the delays, we were able to absorb and get end of August as a date, right? If we really kind of stuck it to everybody, the design team had to compress their schedule, the contractor had to compress their schedule, it gets us to the end of August. So what I wanted to do today, what I wanted to talk to this group about is managing expectations. And trying to get into a date at the end of August is not an ideal situation for the community. It's not an ideal situation for the teachers, and frankly, it leaves zero room for error. We have one bad weather week, we miss the first day of school. So managing expectations is really saying it's too tight to get in for the first day of school, and we want to plan for that now, rather than being in construction, everybody's planning for the first day of school, and things happen. The market's volatile right now. I don't see it calming down anytime in the near future. So again, we want to account for that float time within our schedule and not risk promising the first day of school and not being able to deliver. So I can open it up to comment at this point.
All right. Just going to throw one out there here. What is the source of the delay? It's not clear to me based on what you explained. It looks like there's a waterfall effect, but what is the source of the delay to begin this waterfall effect? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, the value management process. So when we went through schematic design estimating, we realized we had a pretty significant overage of our budget. So an exhaustive effort had to be undertaken to be able to identify cost savings measures, evaluate them, estimate them, and bring them in front of multiple committees for multiple rounds of review.
So that's the source of the delay here? When did you first have knowledge of this delay that you're first presenting to us now?
So we knew we were going to have to go through a value management process when we saw the schedule, or when we saw the initial estimate. Since then, we've gone through multiple schedule reviews to see how we can make up the time.
So that doesn't answer my question as to when did it become aware to you? When did you have knowledge that the expected or likely open date for this school should be January 2028, not September 2027?
The published schedule from Gilbane is January 17th.
So when did it come to your knowledge that these delays that you're presenting tonight are what you expect?
So the October 5th date you're referencing?
I'm asking when it came clear to you.
Yes.
When did it become clear in your mind that the delays you're presenting to us now, when did that knowledge come to you as to, it can't open September 2027, it likely should open January 2028?
So the January 17th schedule is the first date that October 5th was published. From there, we took that date and reviewed it with the internal teams to validate that time frame.
Okay, I don't think you're answering the question. Go ahead.
January 17th
So
of
let's
2025.
So let's take a step back. We've been working with Chris Spiegel for quite some time. I can't recall, when did you join the team?
In September.
Okay, so in September, you joined the team. Is Chris still involved?
Yes, he is still involved.
He's just not here tonight?
Correct.
Okay. So you joined the team, and we were never apprised until last week that there was any delay. And so many of us, I would think all 5 of us, said on time, on budget, all fall, all the time. So it is very concerning that nobody would tell us that. And so I have a hard time believing that you figured it out, you figured it out Thursday night. I watched the meeting. It was kind of interesting as well. And it's very disappointing because I feel like you're the owner's project manager. Your company is that. And that's, I don't know anything about building anything. And we trust that you would be representing us. So I'm very disappointed. I also have a question about what does this mean for every other item? So your contract, I don't have it in front of me, so if you were planning to be done for August and now you're going to be 5 or 6 months longer, does that mean that we've already blown through the project, we're at the top of the budget, then what does that mean for your contract? Are you working, does your contract cover all that extra time, or are we going to then pay for that too?
We are going to do everything we can to keep our contract within that original timeframe.
And if
But-
you don't,
but
it's
you-
a breach of contract. Am I correct, Mike Ursullo?
I don't understand. Like, did we pay for a project,
Right,
or are we just
we'd
going to
have
pay you?
We'd have to look at what causes are out there. Obviously, if there's a riot or a war, there are a lot of things that would go into. I can't tell you that would be a breach of contract.
So I think, I don't know how you all feel about this, but they're starting to pay and disperse funds for the project. Would it be interesting and important for you to see what was being paid and the amounts that were being paid monthly to each of the different vendors? I would be interested in that. Is anyone
Yes.
else?
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you. Okay, because I think when you start to see where it's all going, we are on time, on budget team, even if we're not a team on lots of other things. We agree on that. And then I'd like to see the invoices as they get dispersed out. Is that possible? And going back, Jim, to when we started?
Yes, of
Right.
course. I mean, we're transparent, so if that's what you're asking for, we'll get it.
Okay. Go ahead, Patty.
So just following the news with some of your other projects that are currently going through these value engineering concerns, and then also hearing you reference some of the things that are going on federally, I wonder if you could maybe expand on some of those concerns that are impacting the potential price of our project.
I can't speak to specifically, what's going to be what cost when we go out to ultimately bid the project,
Is there so steel, for instance?
Yes.
Do we have what's your experience with American steel? So is that going to be more expensive?
We are likely going to have cost impacts to the project because of tariffs, yes.
Okay, so do we think that the cost of steel, how much steel is in I would like to know, how much steel we're on the hook for now and what we think that the impacts are going to be to our budget if we have to either buy American steel or pay 25% extra, because it's very important that we know what these costs are before we put a shovel in the ground.
Yeah, we'll go through another estimating exercise during design development, and we'll be able to assess the market, or the estimators will assess the market at that time and attach any presumed premiums because of, market conditions.
Kate, when I heard this news, like a kick in the gut. And what I know is that transparency, right? We talked about it earlier. Transparency when you're working with partners is critical to building that trust in the community, right? And the fact that you all knew in January about this change, and we find out about it through a school building committee, which is, the right avenue to address it. But if you knew in January, this council would have been ready, jumping over any hoop to try to get it back on schedule. I mean, so my questions are, is there anything that we can do to get back on schedule? Is there anything that Studio J and Left Field can do to accelerate the project to get us back onto September 2027, like we promised the voters?
Yeah, we've gone through a lot of different schedule versions as to how we can get there. It comes at a risk of, when you accelerate a design, you come at a risk of quality control, and same thing with construction. So those were areas that we were not willing to compromise quality by accelerating the design in that way and the schedule in that way and compressing those two areas. But throughout the project, we will continue to look at ways to be more efficient, continue to look at how quickly we can turn out early bid packages, how quickly we can get through the local approval process, right? That's an area where we would love as much assistance as possible, to be able to get shovels in the ground as quickly as possible. We are going to turn this building over as soon as we can. But what we don't want to do is promise the first day of school and not be able to deliver that.
I mean, it's already happened.
So
It just happened.
You already
It just
have.
happened.
I want to go back for a second.
No confidence.
We had a meeting with you in December, and we talked about the value engineering of those things. And I don't know, one of us said, do we need to decide tonight? And you all said, nope, we can push it to another meeting. And it happened, I think I was away at that time, and you moved forward on some of those things. That might have been a good time. I feel like several meetings were canceled in December, maybe the holidays, and you didn't meet with the school building committee. I mean, Chris Spiegel has said, his quote was, we sold blank to the community. Well, we sold a high school opening in September, and that's not happening. And it is very disappointing that there were multiple junctures that nobody said to us, even in December, not a big deal. Here I was, remember saying, do we need a special meeting? Do we need to move things along? We would do it.
Has any of that contributed to the cause of the delay?
It's not us. We were told that it didn't matter.
I really wish Chris Spiegel was here personally,
Yeah.
because he's the one that we're used to dealing with. But I'm not trying to shoot the messenger, but it's somewhat disappointing, let's just say, to see you, not that you're not, but we're used to, you know.
I'm not offended whatsoever. We are a team. I will represent Left Field as a company. I do apologize. Chris is not here. I know that he is the one that is
Are you
usually in
his
front of this group.
supervisor, or is he your supervisor?
He is my supervisor.
So he's the project lead, is that correct?
He is the project executive, correct?
Okay, so the project executive is not here to present to the town council on a 4-month delay.
No, it's like 6 probably.
Well, like September to January, right? I mean, I think this council is extremely frustrated. You can see it. I mean, it's not.
It's not the first time that we've been frustrated by
Especially because it's very upsetting when we get the pushback, we sold X to the community. Well, we owe the community a high school on time and on budget. You're already blown through. I feel like we're already at $150 million, which is an incredible amount of money for this community, and not even addressing whatever Patty's addressing with tariffs. And I don't believe it's a very genuine say. I found out about it on January 17th, that you were here doing the geothermal. You guys were all here. Is that a reason for the delay?
Good evening. My name is Jim Rogers. I'm the principal of Left Field.
Yeah.
I'm sorry Chris couldn't be here tonight. Chris has been the lead in this project. Kate's come in, since September. I'm involved in weekly meetings, in monthly meetings. You've seen me probably in the audience at some points during this project. I apologize for the information this evening. We have been completely transparent as we found out about it. You have found out about it. The date is October 5th. We're hoping that we can get a move-in possibly in November if we can work with the teachers and the students and the faculty as opposed to January, so we can shorten up that 3 or 4 month gap. We have been working as a team with Phil on design, with the construction managers, and as the VE progressed, we finished it, we got it approved, we resorted at where we were, we realized we had a problem schedule-wise, here we are. And we have been nothing but transparent.
But why couldn't you guys have figured this stuff out? You have like a million other projects, and now we're going through the same stuff that everybody else is going through in all your projects. Personally, that's how it looks to me, and we don't get the benefit of the information until right now.
Yeah, what do you mean by all our projects? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
It seems like a lot of the projects that are going on, it's just, there's a lot of negative press going on right now about projects that are happening that are way over budget, that are being value engineered. That stuff's been promised that is not being delivered. So
We're going to deliver on the price we said we would. We have contingencies in our budgets so that if we do hit steel tariffs, hopefully we can cover those within the project budget within the contingency. So we've done our best. There's a design contingency. There is a construction contingency. There is a soft cost contingency. So those things have been identified within the budget. And we're hoping if something unforeseen like a tariff hits, we can cover that within the budget still. And in terms of any other projects that we're doing within the state, quite frankly, they've all been challenging given the volatile budgets and the approach that's been taken. We've had to, increase the budget here, through bond, right? We have a meeting, Chris isn't here because we have a meeting in Warwick tonight. That's been a challenge because they took out a certain amount of money before arriving at a design. So I could talk ad nauseum for all the challenges we're having in these projects. In this project, we realized we were 25 million over, much in advance, not like some of these other projects you wait till they get within several months and realize we're over budget. We've been very, very transparent with this group of where we are from a budget and schedule perspective from day one.
Mike, Mary, go ahead.
Couple of things.
Yep.
It was explained to us after the cost increased from the first go-around that it was approximately, and I don't have the down to the last dollar, 131 million. There was a $9 million escalator factored in and a $10 million contingency. You're saying that we're still going to be within that price?
Still within the 150, yes.
Okay. Is the delay going to affect your ability to buy materials at a particular price because you're not ready to buy yet?
Either way, I think we would have hit the tariffs, but it's going to be challenging.
Tariffs aside, I understand that there's chaos in the last 5 weeks.
Right.
I get that. What I'm asking is, you're now telling us that you've got a delay in being able to implement the contract and start the build and finish the build.
That's correct.
That delay itself, isn't that going to impact your prices that you're going to wind up paying?
The escalation that we've allotted within the estimate thus far will cover that delta.
And how does that impact the contract that we have with Gilbane as the manager at risk?
Nothing that I understand. We have a substantial completion date. They're going to achieve that within the price that's been established. So I'm not sure there is a change to Gilbane.
What's the substantial completion date in the project, in the contract?
It's 10/5. It will be when we sign the GMP. We haven't signed the GMP yet.
Okay.
So here's also what I think. You came to the school building committee with that piece of knowledge, and that's how our town manager found out about it and told us. You do see that you didn't learn about it Thursday morning, and you came to the meeting, you're like, hey, Jim, we're way behind. So backing it up back to Rory's question, sometime, probably in November or so, you had to know we weren't making it, and you didn't tell us. And then also, very shameful, disappointing that that's how we find out on Thursday at 5 o'clock. And it's great that we have a meeting on Monday so that we can address some of these things, but we only meet twice a month. We're happy to meet more, I'm sure, going forward over this. But it is wrong. What you did is to communicate that the feedback loop was incorrect.
And that might have been an issue on our part, but we thought as soon as we knew about it, bringing it up publicly in the school building committee meeting was proper. Maybe we should have called this group first and let you know, but we were just trying to be transparent through the process.
But you said you first found out January 17. You didn't bring it to the attention of the school building committee until February. So why was there a 2 to 3 week lag in conveying the information?
That's where we tried to work as a group to see what we could do to tussle with one another to figure out dates, if we could tighten up the dates at all.
And how long did that process take?
Several weeks.
From January 17th through the date of the school building committee meeting?
What date, I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know the date of the school committee meeting.
Which was what,
February
last
6th.
Thursday?
February 6th.
So it took you from January 17 to February 6 to deliberate on that until you finally decided that there was going to be a delay as you presented here. Is that right?
2 to 3 weeks. I don't know exactly what date we knew and what date we came in front of you, but it was several weeks from the 17th to understand the impacts to the project.
So what did you do in that period to try to see if you could actually keep the expected open date?
We challenged, Phil and his design deliverable dates. We challenged the contractor, and there was actually some pullback, believe it or not, from both to achieve where we are today, what we're presenting today. But that was our goal, was to challenge both the designer and the contractor.
What do you mean by pullback?
Our goal was to see if we could tighten up the dates, if we could get sooner delivery dates on the design from Phil that would then allow an earlier start from the contractor. And there was a lot of due diligence done, and Phil, I don't know if you want to talk about where we are at all.
I think the only other piece of information I can add, and there's nothing I can say that will relieve your frustration, but as our entire team grows and expands with additional consultants and more participation from the construction manager and the OPM, we're getting new data. So as we were deliberating over these last couple weeks about, Phil, can you produce faster? Gilbane, can you contract quicker? We started to also overlay the permitting approval process, both locally and from the state. And then speaking with our site civil engineers, you could imagine all of us being a little conservative so that you are not put in a position of saying that we're going to open school in September and then a month before we tell you that you can't. There's been plenty of recent examples in Rhode Island where that has happened. We don't want that to happen to you. So now we're getting information from other consultants that is probably just as conservative. And they're saying, Phil, a permitting process that may have taken 3 to 4 months. It might be prudent to make that more like 7 to 9 months. So when we start overlaying that information, now we start getting a little bit more scared about not being able to meet a very tight deadline. I know this is terribly disappointing, but I can tell you that this entire group has been as proactive as possible and as transparent as possible in trying to do what is right in presenting the information through the proper channel. Now, maybe there needs to be some adjustment to the communication chain, but that is the typical process, is to go through the school building committee and then through the school committee and the town council. So, go ahead.
Phil, you had a meeting in November at South Kingstown High School.
Yes, I did.
Right? And so at that meeting, in front of all of our neighbors, you said, in spring, in 2025, you're going to have the schematics, right, and then go into it. And then a month later, you presented to us, and it went from spring to summer. And I talked to you out there, and I said, hey, what's up with that? Why did you not let us know that you were pushing that back? And you said, oh, I'm sorry about that. It's how this process works. And I said, okay, I trust you on this, right? Remember we had that conversation?
Yes.
Great. So when we're getting information like this, that is at odds with that promise, right? It's at odds with what we said to the people of South Kingstown at these meetings. And so and I'm not here to scold you. I'm here to provide you an off-ramp. Please accelerate what you can do. Please put more workforce hours into this. Please make us a priority. Because the people of South Kingstown deserve it. It's not fair.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm still, I keep rewinding. So the vote was May 7th. That was May 7th, 2024. That was 10 months ago. You got an approval within 10 days of that and could start. And it just feels like that piece didn't happen correctly. I mean, it's hard to believe. I think a memory of a public, once we approved it, what did they do? Like, why is it, like, you're not even hanging your hat on the geothermal exploration as the delay. It just feels like, I don't know, maybe I am scolding, I don't know. It just was really disappointing. And now you're already saying we're at the top, we're gonna spend $150 million. you know as well as I know, RIDE is not going to recognize over $40 million of that, and that's 100% on the town. So that is a really expensive ask for our residents. And so it's already upsetting me to think you've already blown to 150 when I was hopeful that you were looking at 133, because that is what, right? 131, 133, you're already doing that. And so it's hard, and you're supposed to be our owner's project manager, ours. And I feel like, what?
Nothing.
What do I keep saying?
No, not you,
Go ahead.
So I just don't understand how you didn't represent us in a way that so we wouldn't be here. Because in November, or whenever it was December, when we were doing the value engineering, that's 2 months ago. We would have moved faster had we been told. We would have had another meeting and moved. We would have done what was asked of us if that needed to be done. I don't want you to wait and be like, oh, the town council meeting is in 2 weeks and that we need to get on the agenda. You can speak to Jim, and we'll come in and we'll do a special meeting to move this along. It's just really, in my head, I'm saying, what are we paying $90,000 a month for when this project is already behind? And that's what the community is going to turn to each of us and say, that's why when you see the bills, you'll have to be able to explain to people, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And again, then you're telling me that you're going to blow through the completion date to January potentially, and somehow I know nobody works for free. You'll be made whole, and we will still be trying to explain to kids and parents and families why it took so long. So it's just really upsetting. And that's it. Not saying another word.
Are any of these original project schedule dates identified in any contracts existing? Can you answer that?
I would have to go through and look at the original contracts. That original project schedule is part of the RFP for both the architect and the construction manager.
Okay.
How long will that take?
To look at the contracts?
Yeah, to get the information.
As soon as you guys would like me to come back, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to know whether any of these dates are identified in contracts, and if so, we'd like the contracts to be reviewed by our solicitor. And if any of those dates cannot be met, we'd like to see if there are any remedies to be sought to make sure they are met. But it seems unclear as to whether those dates are identified in any contracts at this point.
Again, I'll have to look at the contract specifically, but if you're talking about a contractual obligation for substantial completion, that typically comes with a GMP, which we have not yet entered into.
I'm talking about any of these dates. I'm talking about a provision within a contract that identifies a date which you have portrayed on this presentation screen here. So I'm not talking about just substantial completion.
I'm happy to look into all of the contracts we have open currently and identify which of these dates are referenced in them specifically.
The town should have copies of contracts that we've entered into that would, if it did, identify any of these dates. Is that right? Mike, Jim?
Any contract that the town of South Kingstown has entered into is a public document, and I'm sure if it exists, it exists, and I'll get copies of them, and more than happy to review them, and we'll look at the dates and whatever else we need to do, but I'm not sure. We'll definitely do that. You've asked for it, but in terms of getting to the bottom line of whether or not we've got anyone on the hook to open that school in September of 27, it sounds like we don't have anything like that. That's what it sounds like, because we haven't signed with the contractor yet.
So we have not signed with the contractor yet, so that means that we don't even have a real price yet. Is that what we're really saying? So yeah, this is really, really not good.
What, didn't we meet Gilbane, and they said they were going, I'm
The
confused
thing
on why
is
that
like,
project.
until they get this work done, Gilbane can't even give us a price, and we can't even get an agreement on it. So this is like, seems much worse than what it appears.
Let me ask you this. You work on projects for various cities and towns. Is this problem we're seeing now, this delay, this waterfall effect, is this happening everywhere? Is this common?
Well, at this point, everybody's seeing issues with cost.
I'm not talking about costs. I'm talking about the delay.
Well, the cost is the reason for the delay, because we did have to go through that value engineering process. So, yes, it's very typical for what we're seeing right now. Unfortunately, the costs are unprecedented, and they're causing a lot of problems with multiple construction projects across the country.
So it's typical with all the projects you're working on currently, your firm? You seeing this? You're seeing this everywhere that you're working with?
Are you talking about the cost or the schedule?
I'm talking about the waterfall effect and the delay here, which you say is interrelated with the costs.
We are not seeing a schedule delay associated with every project. We are seeing cost impacts across most projects.
Kate,
in the
we're
state.
very aware of the cost impacts of
Yes.
the tariffs. What we're talking about is the delay in schedule,
Yes.
right? This is what we're all concerned about.
Yeah,
right now.
so
It's super straightforward.
in a soundbite, what is the reason for the schedule delay? Not the cost, the schedule.
Yes, let me try and explain this differently. The value engineering process was extensive. It was a tremendous amount of time that was spent researching ideas for how to reduce cost, and it was a tremendous amount of time estimating and approving those reductions. So the time impact was related to the estimate.
During this time, when we were doing the cost reductions, when did it come to your attention that, well, maybe this project's going to have to be delayed? Was that the January 17th date? I just feel that during that time, if you said to us, hey, if you don't get your act together right now, we're going to be delayed. I don't feel like that was conveyed to us at all. And that's where a lot of this frustration is coming from, Kate.
And I think that's from that value engineering, when we said, do you need to know today? It was December.
Yeah,
that's right.
It was December.
All right. Go ahead.
It's not just the one thing, it's all of it. The frustration is coming from the fact that at no time did anybody indicate to us that there was an urgent need for something to be done. In fact, it was the opposite. When I asked about the submission, the latest submission to RIDE, the impression that I was given was they're not looking for a deadline, they don't have a deadline for us, we can get it to them shortly. And so, yes, the discussion about value engineering did go on for some time, before it even got to the council. But you've never indicated to us that this is, all this deliberation is costing you time and going to cost you money.
Yeah, the deliberation wasn't the whole issue. It was much, we had to arrive at a number of items that didn't impact the school program so that we could get to a project and a budget that made sense and a scope. Phil then had to draw it. So a lot of this impact came from revised drawings. First we had to go through you folks for approval. That was the upfront part, and then Phil had to do a redesign. And that's what all led to this 2 months is the approval process to a smaller part. A larger part, Phil had a new school he had to design, or at least new aspects of it.
So in that time, it's really a priority for Phil to say, hey, can you please communicate with the town council and the school building committee that we're not going to be able to be on time unless we change that? I think it's very straightforward. I mean, this should have been done, folks. This should have been done.
I mean, you guys came to us and gave us this big presentation on geothermal, and then we're like, oh, you have to decide on this. And so I spent a week learning about geothermal, and then we got to the meeting, it's like, oh no, you don't have to learn about geothermal, or we don't have to make that decision now. And it was like, at first you told us because you wanted to work on the schematics, so you needed to know what kind of heating was going to go in so that you could design it correctly. So when we got to that meeting before the end of the year, And I said, aren't we going to make that decision? Oh, no, nobody's going to do that work over Christmas. And it was like kind of laughed at. But it was pretty serious to me, the meeting before, because I spent the whole time learning about geothermal so that I could answer your questions. And it was just like laughed at almost. And that's why I'm angry.
And also, I think about, we talked about value engineering, and we said, can you do something with athletics? And once again, Chris Spiegel said, we sold it to the community, and you can't scale down the athletics when we're looking for money. Again, I don't feel good about this, and it's on you to, one, repair the communication issues, because we didn't know. And you knew. I don't believe that you found out on January 17th. I don't believe that I think you've known for a lot longer, and you're not an active agent in trying to say, town council, have this meeting, do this. If we knew in December that you needed to have that decision, we would have made that decision then. It would have given us 2.5 months. I don't know, a lot. And it's just very upsetting to me, because again, we're already at $150 million. You're basically telling us tonight the high school is going to cost $150 million, and we better make sure our pencils are sharp, because this is going to be, people are going to have their eyes open wide when their tax bills come, because now we're at $150, and I can't even imagine what that is, because we're already looking at our budget and we know what here comes the fifth quarter. It's just going to be there. So. Shame.
You're coming tonight telling us that it's going to be January 2028. What could happen that you feel could push us into June 2028? I mean, what are we, and also, it's not a great idea. Have you ever opened a school up in the middle of the year before?
Yes.
How'd it go?
It's definitely challenging. Ideally, we would have opened in June.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, the January date came from the intention of moving in over winter break. During the building committee meeting, we had great conversations about creative scheduling and looking for ways to do a break earlier, so that we're not moving in over winter break, and potentially moving in November. So January really was just capitalizing on the holiday break, because it was the longest period of time in which there was no school being held.
So is there anything that you can stand in front of us right now and say, something could come up that will delay us until June 2028?
I would have to be pretty catastrophic.
All right, we're going to hold you to that. Pretty catastrophic. Some sort of event that would be pretty catastrophic would be what would lead to a June 2028 opening in this building. All right, I want to talk about, the fact that, this project is a priority of this council. It's really, it's up there. It's just about number one. A lot of us, this has been a focus of all of ours, even before this term started. You got 4 or 5 council members here on this term that existed from the prior term. You have a new councilman, but all of our priorities are the same on this one. We want to get this done. We wanted to get it done on time. We wanted to get it open September 2027. So this news is really bad news. Catastrophic news, really. I mean, this is tough to take in, but I'm hopeful that, Phil, you said that these are conservative timelines. I'm hoping that they're so conservative that there's potential that they could be done earlier than outlined. Sounds like no. It sounds like you're nodding. Can you speak to that?
We're going to do everything we can to improve timelines. But again, I don't want to promise a first day of school move-in and not be able to deliver that. I want to set expectations and not come to you, a couple months before when we have a school calendar planned to say that we have this issue.
All right. Well, going forward, we hope that we could, get honest answers from you, straight from the get-go, transparent. Soon as things come to your attention that aren't the best news to convey, we're hopeful that we can receive that information. Going forward, I'd like to see Chris Spiegel be the representative of your firm speaking to us. He's been with us from the beginning. We've seen you the first time in December. I know you've been working with the school building committee a little bit. but, he's really been our voice for the project from left field. So I'd like for him to be here present when we're discussing the project. I find it odd that he's not here. So, I know that you guys are a firm. He's just an agent of the firm. You guys are agents of the firm. But, he's been with us. He's fought for this project with us. You guys are fairly new faces to us, even though you've been involved with it in the project. But I just, I share the angst from the other members here. And, please do whatever you can to move this forward in a timely, cost-efficient manner. This isn't the first time we've had a hiccup with this project, and I understand that there's things outside of your control, sort of in the economy, geopolitical type things as well. But, we want to get this done. That's it. Help us get there.
The last thing is you've been working with us for about a year now, is that right?
Since September.
September, okay. So what grade would you give yourself so far? A through F?
Chris has been here longer. She's been.
Not you, I mean as left field in Studio Jade. What grade would you give yourself so far?
Maybe ask Phil.
Yeah.
Phil?
That's a difficult question.
What would you give yourself a grade?
I would probably, that is a difficult question.
Hmm?
Only because I know the level of effort that has gone into the design, the redesign that we're going to be excited to share next week, that represents a high school that meets the program but has been reduced in square footage. So on the technical side of design and maintaining the program and aligning with the budget, I'd probably say solid B. I'd say on communication, we probably all could do better on communication.
Phil, overall
So-
grade, just overall.
B minus.
B minus. B minus, okay.
All right. Well, could I further on that?
But see, it's just hard to understand because I'm sitting here, I have known who you are since day one. Was that 2021 or 2022? When did you come on?
Probably 2020.
No.
October of 21.
Oh, okay, October
Okay.
of 21.
So three years, right? All these meetings, and multiple times I've asked, like, what does the high school look like? We're not there yet. I still don't even know if we've, I kept saying, when we're going to see it, and I feel like it just kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed, Phil, and it's confusing because you have been the anchor for a lot of the things. And then you hired SLAM, because you only do certain things, and they do the other things. But we hired SLAM over a year ago, correct? It's confusing to me that we're so far off, and that you even had to spend 2 months doing value engineering, because we didn't the high school was only going to have 725 kids a year ago. It's still what it's going to have now. It's confusing to me why you're not farther along even in the designs and the back end stuff that we wouldn't even see, but you know where it's headed. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Go ahead.
Two things. One, I want to make a correction. Tonight is not about managing expectations. Expectations were set a year ago. This is resetting expectations, and that's the frustration from this table. Second thing is, there needs to be a sense of urgency on your parts to get this done and to communicate with the council. I don't usually speak on behalf of all 5 people, but I'm pretty comfortable with this. We will meet whenever necessary in a special meeting on 72 hours notice, I think. 48 hours notice. If you need us to do something, just ask, but you have to communicate.
It would be nice to see like a real feeling of urgency and sincerely that you guys understand what we're talking about here. This is really, really bad.
Yep.
All right, I think we're going to end it there. So,
May I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
We believe in this project. Get us back on target, please.
All right, thank you. All right, that's going to move us back to new business. Item D, Jim Manning, we're going to go to you on this one. It's a Terry Murphy item, but she is not present tonight.
You're on 12B?
D.
D?
10D.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're back on 10. We're on new business.
Yes, Terry Murphy asked me to speak on this. So they print numerous brochures throughout the season, the Parks and Rec and Leisure Services, and a contract goes out to do that. And this amount, $14,356, is the 3-year contract, and this will be for a multitude of pamphlets, whatever is needed for schedules and so forth, whether it's the beaches, the recs center, camps, and so forth.
All right, thank you, Jim. Any questions on this one?
Motion to approve 10D.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes. It's going to move us to item E. Rich Bourbonnais.
Good evening. This is a request to make some improvements at the wastewater plant and specifically the water feed that comes into the building. Narragansett has requested that we install, or that they install a new meter. But as part of that, what I had noticed over there and some of us had looked at was that we didn't have really, I thought personally, a very efficient bypass system. You know, if anything has to be repaired in the string of meters and valves and things, you want to be able to continue to flow water. So we're going to do some additional pipe works. Now, the way this is written is that Narragansett is responsible to pay for the meter because it is a meter that is a component of their water system. But the other piping is paid for under the wastewater enterprise fund, and it would be split among the partners. That's the way this is written. So to get back, this is a request for resolution authorization award to Atlantic Controls to do the work in the amount of $14,296.20, which includes $2,000 contingency. But that does not include approximately $900 that's going to be spent on the meter install. Okay? And so what I'm going to be asking is that Narragansett is invoiced separately for that meter install, and then that we're only paying for some of those other water improvements.
So the 900 is like labor, right? Basically.
The 900 actually included the meter itself and the install of the meter itself, and that's it. The rest of the work, the other $12,000, is for all the other pipe work, valves, cleaning up the whole system, you know, making it a little more efficient.
How many bids came in?
We did not bid this. Atlantic Controls is our, first Atlantic Controls is on the state MPA for all their plumbing work. They are also our site contractor for all our water work and sewer work. So we'll call them usually in an emergency situation. So they're always sort of on hand. The fact that they are in the MPA actually is a little more convenient, so we have them on speed dial generally. We'll be putting that contract out again this year. I don't think they're going to hold their prices this year. So we may see some changes for next year, but right now that's who they are.
Thank you for the clarification. I sent you an email about which part Narragansett was responsible for as opposed to the three parties, South Kingstown, URI, and Narragansett, but now I get it. Thank you.
Good.
All right, do I hear a motion on this item?
Motion to approve item 10E.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you.
Chief Moynihan, come on up. Oh, this is actually just a resolution authorizing the clerk to advertise for order of notice. Do I hear a motion on this one?
Motion to approve item 10F.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item G, discussion and potential action relative to implementing a summer music series at the South Kingstown Town Beach as requested by Councilmember Wedgemont. Jay, go ahead.
Jim, because Terry's not here, do you want to take the lead on her response?
Sure. I thought we were supposed to have the deputy come, but I don't see him. But so the town does have a series. It's usually held like at South County Commons. But Councilmember Wedgemont came up with the idea that we could have maybe a summer concert series at the beach, and which might draw more crowds and would be a big event. So I vetted it with Terry, and we could try it and see if it's well attended and if it works. And the cost was not really that expensive. It was about $8,000 total. And so we're here tonight. So the councilman asked me, where do we go from here? I should bring it to the council and let them discuss it and see where it goes.
All right, cool. Any thoughts?
Well, it's your idea. Do you want to speak first?
Sure. So I brought this idea up because I've been to the town music series at Narragansett Town Beach, at Westerly Town Beach, and they're great crowd pleasers. Folks really get a sense of community and an attachment to their town beaches, and I thought that South Kingstown could do that. Leisure Director Murphy suggested that we split up the music series, 3 at the Green, the Village in the Green, and then 3 at the town beach. And we would also be able to mitigate some of those costs by getting private, either local businesses or nonprofits wanting to donate. A great part about this is that we could have parking at the town beach and also Matunic Elementary, and I think that it would be a great way to have sustainability involved too, because it would bring up some of the aspects of the beach which are not great, which is the erosion of the beach. And we have a lot of organizations in South Kingstown that try to work for strengthening sustainability and work on the environment, and it could be an opportunity to showcase some of those groups like Save the Bay, the Narragansett Watershed, the Saugatucket River Group, and I just thought that we have a lot of great musicians in this town that it would be a great opportunity to showcase South Kingstown's talent in music. So that's why I brought it to the attention of the town manager.
All right, thank you, Jay. Easy one for me to get behind. I'm about it. I think it's cool. I think it's great. I think it's good for the community, so I am for it.
Me too.
So I have a question. I think the idea is a good idea. I have a few things to think about. One is, where's the money coming? We've hear repeatedly from Jim, the budget is really challenging. It's not a lot of money, but where's the money coming from?
Well, we'd have to fit into the operating budget, which will be a point of deliberation as we move through March.
In speaking to Terry, this amount of money is not a large amount. It's about $6,200. So she said she would have that from rearranging some of her projects and plans within the recreational budget.
Okay, so the Village Green series, there's 6 of them. We're basically doing 9, or are we doing 3 and 3?
He said we were going to.
I believe that Director Murphy's idea was to put 3 and 3, like Councilwoman Alley said. Yep.
Okay, so
So it would probably be like the same amount of money if we already do 6 concerts.
Okay.
It's just,
and so that's fine. And I just want to point out that I looked at the cost breakdown. So last year in the budget cycle, Wakefield Concert Band got a small amount of money through the grants, right? But we discussed and we agreed that Terry was going to put that in her operating budget. They're an organization, they're going to perform, they should be paid, they should be part of, we should be budgeting for that. Instead, it looks like a 0 right now. You remember this conversation? Okay, good. Okay.
We agreed that a certain agency would be funded from our Parks and Recreation fund.
She pays other entertainment. They're the entertainment. So instead of coming to the grants, because that doesn't make sense, that's not what the grants are for, we talked about adding that into the operating budget going forward.
So I think that's a great idea, Councilwoman Bergner. I think artists should always be paid for the work that they do. I think that a great part of having a summer beach series is that I believe that we'll have a great response from our local businesses that want to help sponsor this, and I think that that will help mitigate any costs to the town, especially because the dollar amount is lower. $6,000, nothing to sneeze at, but on our budget, it's not as much. And I think that, again, I think we'll have a lot of sponsorship opportunity in town.
So,
I'm sorry, there's one piece of this that I failed to mention, that this might be a good project to refer to the Rec Commission.
yeah.
And then let them look at it and really give you more accurate numbers and feasibility of this and bring it back.
That, it does say that in the end of the memo. She wants to take it back to the
Yes.
Rec Commission because they have to get volunteers and organizers and stuff like that. But I just want to make sure that the Wakefield Concert Band should be compensated for performing. And that's the issue that we identified last year, and then just making sure that it's in the operating budget and that we don't lose sight of that, and then they come back and try to get a grant, because that's not
Well,
what we do.
the human service allocations are through the operating budget regardless of the source of the funds. You're talking about, instead of having it come from the amount that we appropriate toward outside agencies, that it actually come from the Parks and Rec budget or Parks and Rec fund directly.
Yes.
So I think that's yet to be determined, but we can work that out. It's an interesting idea, and let's flesh it out as the budget goes.
Well, we talked about, I just reminded, because it's, once again, they're on the budget with a zero. So that's why, on the memo.
because I think that's their whole model, is like they don't charge to perform because they've been a entity for 100 years. And so that's, sorry. So I believe that their model is not to charge, but I think, I understand what you're saying.
But they came and asked for money, so.
Well, but that's
Right,
different.
and
But
they-
the town for
Right,
years or decades, they've been around for 80 years.
100, yeah.
Did subsidize.
Yeah.
And then
those.
we didn't subsidize them, and then we all felt bad, and then we did. Well, I felt bad.
So, okay.
So what is the actionable item here? Are we referring it to the Recreation Committee?
Yes, I would recommend, let's refer it to the Rec Commission, and then we can get more facts on it and maybe bring up that matter as well, and
Could we put a time constraint on that we would have a response for them by the next, or the meeting in March?
They only meet, I don't know when they meet,
Well,
once
yeah.
a month?
yeah,
They may have already met.
I'll ask the director, Terry Murphy, to expedite this and get it in front of the Rec Commission as soon as she can, and I'll get you a date in my updates when that earliest possible time is.
I just don't want it to be held for further study or that kind of thing, you know what I mean?
I get it.
Thank you.
It should be
Until
noted
August.
that the majority of the town council has already expressed their interest and desire to move forward
Yes.
with it, but still referring to the Rec Commission for their deliberation.
Yes.
Just two last points. One, just to join the club. The special event that we had for the 300th, the bonfires, they were all very, very well attended, very well received events. I think it is a good idea. Speaking of managing expectations, however, one of the things we should probably point out that at least is going to be a question mark in my head is that the grant that we received from an earmark from Congressman Magaziner for beach replenishment is one of the items that's up in the air given the chaos that's going on in Washington with the spending freeze. That may or may not impact what we can do.
That is one of the grants that we are concerned about.
Yeah.
I also just want to say that in that budget that we were referring to, the Recreation Committee, we should have at least a small budget for sound and equipment for that, because that's an important part of putting on a show that sounds good. So,
I'll leave that up to the experts. I don't know anything about it. But I'm sure that'll be a consideration as well.
thank you.
Motion
All right.
to direct item 10G to the Rec Commission for further refinement.
Seconded.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. It's going to bring us to item H, finally. Discussion tabled from December 18, 2024, and continued from January 13 and January 27, 2025, regarding the impact of using American Rescue Plan Act funds to advance planned capital improvement program purchases as requested by Councilmember Bergner. We got Brian here. Jim, Deb, go ahead.
Thank you.
Good evening. Jeez. So before you this evening, I'm going to give a brief summary of the ARPA funds as they were reallocated in September. Before you this evening, or before what you're looking at right here, this is a graphic that is depicting the reallocation in September. So this represents the $9,071,225 of ARPA funds the town received, as well as repurposed CIP funds totaling $1,814,524. So with that, $4.3 million went to health and safety projects. Just under $2.8 million went to Old Mountain Field. $1.3 million went to planning and the facade program. And $663,000 went to HSOA grants. And finally, $1.7 million went to miscellaneous capital projects. And this slide will depict the miscellaneous capital projects of what I just mentioned, the $1.7 million.
So in the future, if you make a graph like this, could you, because I didn't write down all the amounts around the pie chart, do you know how to do that?
I do, I get cognizant that when I start putting a lot of things on there, it gets small, so I'm...
Well, there's not, I don't see that, I don't see the amounts broken down.
Yeah, I can provide that. I kind of had that in my notes because it would shrink things, but I can provide that. So of this slide, of the miscellaneous projects, $180,000 went to information technology, $438,000 went to facilities, $51,000 for public services, just over $1 million Parks and Recreation, and $60,000 for town assessor. And then I was going to do a breakdown by department. So EMS completed 9 projects, all of which having to do with health and safety of the town. Of the 9 projects, originally they had $105,000 set aside in CIP funding. Those funds were moved out to another project, to Old Mountain Field. So you'll see the first column, the original CIP funds, you had $105,000. That represented 41% of the actual funding for these projects. That was all moved out. And these projects were completed with ARPA funds totaling $258,000, where again, when you slide over to the right, you'll see between the year-to-date expended and the encumbered amounts, and then sliding over further, the percent expended, this department has been fully expended on ARPA funds totaling $258,124. For the police department, they had 2 projects, one being personnel related, and the other being the voice over IP system. They had CIP funds totaling $18,947. That was moved out again for Old Mountain Field, and you'll see the revised ARPA budget, combined ARPA and CIP of $409,886. So they had on hand available CIP funds of 4.62%. All the funds were expended related to ARPA, and all funds have been either expended or obligated at this time.
Brian, just a question.
Yeah.
So is it one full-time employee was the budgeted for $244,000?
It was over the course of a couple of years, 2 years.
Over 2 years?
Okay. I don't remember how many employees.
It's we added 2 police officers.
2.
So it's 2 police officers?
2 police officers for 2 years.
That makes more sense. Thank you, Chief.
Mm-hmm. Again, both of these are for health and safety. The next department is information technology. Information technology completed 7 projects, all within the realm of the miscellaneous capital projects. They had 0 funding related to CIP, or capital reserve funds at the time of this plan was enacted, and they spent $180,428 from ARPA funds for this project. Of those funds, $148,009 has been expended, $25,219 has been encumbered, and you have $7,200 through interagency agreements, also encumbered. Next would be communications, which completed 3 projects, and all 3 related to health and safety. This department had CIP funds totaling $105,000 when this plan was enacted. Those $105,000 were moved out for Old Mountain Field, and the projects were completed totaling $191,628 of ARPA. Of those funds, $173,000 has been encumbered, and you have interagency agreements totaling $18,108. Next is facilities. Facilities completed 13 projects, one of which I should note, even though it's facilities, one of which is the new facility for EMS. So they had on hand, they had CIP funds totaling $510,500, and they had projects completed of $2,634,725. So that 510 of CIP funds were moved out for Old Mountain. And they had expended $106,000, they have encumbered $2.4 million, and they have interagency agreements totaling $52,000, all of which either been committed or expended. And I should say the breakdown for facilities, they had 9 miscellaneous capital projects and 4 health and safety projects. For public services, they had 4 projects. 2 were miscellaneous capital and 2 were health and safety. Public services had on hand $620,000 of CIP funds, which were moved out for Old Mountain Field, and they completed projects totaling $686,000 from ARPA funds. Of that amount, just under $15,000 was expended, and $671 has been encumbered, all accounted for either being expended or obligated. Parks and Recreation, this one gets a little busy. This is where you're going to find Old Mountain. So in the first column, you'll see they had, again, the CIP funds totaling $394,000. And this is where you're seeing the revised CIP funds. So all of the other funds that have been moved out from CIP funds were getting moved into Old Mountain Field. I'm going to hone in on that third line, the Old Mountain Field concession. So to look at their budget, they're getting revised CIP funds of $1,814,524 and ARPA funds totaling $977,571 for a total project available of $2,792,095. Why you're seeing on this line available funding that has not been obligated, because again, those are our CIP funds that don't need to be obligated by the deadline. These are not ARPA funds, so they will remain unobligated until this project is awarded. Overall, this department completed 10 projects, 7 miscellaneous, 2 health and safety, and 1 for Old Mountain.
Brian, what was the 40% they didn't spend, they didn't use?
I'm sorry, the 40%?
It says 59.54% of it was used.
Oh, well, that's because that $1.8 million for Old Mountain has not been obligated yet. Those are CIP funds. We didn't need to get those obligated by the 12/31 deadline like the ARPA funds, so they're just sitting in the town CIP related to Old Mountain right now.
So that's the 40 point.
That's why you're only seeing that obligated at just about 60%, because those funds are just sitting. They're not encumbered at this time. They're obligated to Old Mountain Field, but they're not encumbered like everything else is encumbered. That'll get encumbered once we do award that project.
Okay.
That 1.8 million is town money, correct?
Yes.
And the difference between that and the 2.792,
Yes. ARPA.
that difference is the ARPA.
Correct.
Follow, Jay?
So it's a combination.
Okay, just
Yes.
making sure. Because it's like I'm not a CPA, so I say it like it's like straightforward, easier. Thank you.
Yep. And a couple of smaller departments. We have assessors completing 2 departments. They were a 1-for-1. They had $60,000 of CIP funds, which were moved out for Old Mountain, replenished by and used ARPA funds totaling $60,000 to complete their 2 projects. All funding has either been obligated or expended. And the planning department had 4 projects, all of which have been obligated. You'll see there you have the facade program and some of the HSOA project. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, the HSOA is coming up next in town manager. And this is where, again, the HSOA projects, no funds were originally available in the CIP, and those were all ARPA funds totaling the $363,650, which again those have been expended, not just obligated. And finally, a townwide total. You'll see that first column, the CIP funds coming in, the $1,814,524. They're all getting funneled into Parks and Recreation for Old Mountain, and that's the total along the bottom. So that's where, again, the third line, you'll see that total for the town ARPA funds, the $9,071,000, and the total between the ARPA and the CIP of the projects completed, which are 71 projects totaling $10,885,749.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Can you just go back and just say that last slide a little bit more slowly? I just,
The subtotal that I'm on now?
yeah.
So originally, this was at the meeting in September, I don't have the date, when
Yeah.
we brought the new plan before, the reallocation plan. We identified projects that had available CIP funding. So we identified those funds and moved those out. That was the first column, $1,814,000. They were all funneled into Old Mountain Field. ARPA funds were used both for Old Mountain Field and all the various other 70 projects, and that's the third column, that $9,071,000. The next column is combined ARPA and CIP. That's where you're getting the total of the $1.8 million and the $9 million, and the total project cost for each department. And then you'll have the totals of expended, encumbered, and interagency agreements.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Questions?
Because I know I was asking, but did anyone else find it helpful to see where, we did a lot of spending and moving, and just to see the whole big picture in one place? I think it's helpful to me.
Yes. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
All righty. It's going to move us back to public comment. If anybody in the audience wishes to speak on any matter and hasn't spoken already, I invite you to come on up. We just ask that you introduce yourself. We're going to limit you to 5 minutes.
Brett Harrington, Wakefield. Kind of all over the board here. I'm as disappointed as you guys were with that school review. All right, so we have the one, we were hoping for the $133 million. What we've seen, and I've been to many meetings, is the budget just keeps going up. As taxpayers, we were hoping that the 2.5 PAYGO money would go to reducing the amount that we owed that was given to the school. Now they're talking tonight, these guys here, that we were also hoping and promised that, not promised, but hoping that that $10 million contingency they wouldn't need, and we could also whack that off the top. Well, they're taking that as well, and they're gonna blame it on, tariffs and this, that, and the other. But as you guys said, they're going out 5-6 months. You had brought up, something that possibly could make it June. What happens when they go in the ground? They hit something in the ground, okay? I'm not confident. I think it's gonna, this group, you guys spent a lot of money. You said, hey, they promised you, hey, we're gonna do this, we're gonna have the contingency so that we don't get behind like these projects in Warwick and with this and with that, and they blew all this, you know what? And here we are today looking at this. So, let me see, basically, I don't want them to go really fast to get this in the time frame we hoped, because they talked about safety. We don't want a shoddy school just so they can get them in there in September. I don't want that. But at the end of the day, guys, I don't use this phrase too much, but the school committee does, which I love, is a non-starter, okay? So, at the end of that meeting, you guys had said on time. I was hoping that followed by on budget. And if it's going to be to get this into budget, like we said, we were hoping $133 million. That's a pipe dream now. We'll be lucky if we do it for 150. But if we're running over that, then they're just going to have to shrink the size of the school, okay? I know you guys talked about, well, they had that meetings ago where they talked about, their suggestion was to shrink the auditorium. No, that's a non-starter. Shrink the size, square footage, that's a non-starter. I heard them say something about shrinking square footage tonight, so maybe they changed on that. But anyway, on time, on budget.
Thank you.
Jim O'Neill, Wakefield. I know you're a little disappointed. I can certainly agree with you about the high school opening. My knowledge of what's happening is I still believe that a company like Gilbane, who's not only powerful, large, international, they're an unbelievable company. I think the sun revolves around Gilbane Company. They are tough. They are tough on subs. But if there's a 4-month delay needed here, I have to believe it's because of Gilbane or who may be their subs in this particular project. But they're the ones that are immovable. They've always been. They're incredibly phenomenal company. And they're phenomenal and incredibly well respected because they really come in on time and really on budget. So I would have to say that something along the lines of Gilbane, who maybe they're subs, but if they need 4 months, they need 4 months. It'll certainly be done right. But I know how disappointed you are. My concerns are with the state budget and deficits, and a bond market can move in our favor or against our favor at that time. We don't know what, in fact, will happen. And the only word I got confused about when the president here was trying to get it from Ms. Turner, I couldn't figure out the word overage. Was she talking about cost or just over the time limit that was expected? I still don't have that answer. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about tonight was I wanted to talk about our original favorite councilwoman, Ally, back in October of 2023. She pinned Chris Spiegel to the, if you remember, Chris Spiegel had to come down to pennies. Miss Ally said, no more spinning wheels here, no more guesswork. You asked for definitive numbers. And I've tried to work through these numbers, and I've gone back to listen to all those meetings time and time again. I believe we've overbid on the hard costs. Nobody talks about the $16 million for soft costs. Have we overbid on that too? I know we're protected with the contingency, but this is too baffling. It truly is. If my numbers are right, I'm looking at $10 to $12 million overbid on the hard costs. We don't know anything about the soft costs at $16 million. Will it be $5 million? Nothing. Could be another, let's just say $5 million there. $10 million on the midpoint escalation cost. $10 million on the overage. There's too much money just floating around here. You have to admit that, no matter what. So what I wanted to do was ask Miss Ally if I have to send a letter to the council and the manager. I would like him to address just the 5 numbers he gave you and the public in preparation for the bond issue in May, but it was October. I want to see where those numbers stand today, because all of a sudden now it's 161,000 square feet, 160, 155. He did everything based on 143,900 square feet for that school, and he told the public, and the public gentleman that spoke here that night, John Machiko, he said, give me, to Chris Spiegel, give me the total cost square foot for the entire project. And that number was, do you remember? I'll give it to you, $965 per square foot. I can't come up with that number anywhere with all the arithmetic that we've gone through to date. So anyway, I just would appreciate it if Miss Alley would just, I'll send you the numbers through the manager, but if you would ask, just for that comparison again, he should have that right at his fingertips. So let's do that just to keep the public who all voted that particular bond issue so they feel confident. And then lastly, I just wanted you to keep in mind, I've been involved with 2 real estate transactions over the last 6 months, one in Narragansett, one in Charlestown. And please keep in mind, because every time we talk about the high school, we talk about the bond issue, the incredible tax hit that's going to come. But I just want to know how difficult this is for someone like myself right now. Both Narragansett and Charlestown, if you have $1 million assessment, $1 million assessment, that $1 million assessment, both Narragansett and Charlestown, pay the same property taxes that a $500,000 assessment in South Kingstown property owners pay. The numbers are incredible. I'm asking you to pay attention when the school committee comes before you on that budget. Boy, you've got to start paying attention to this, and all these numbers absolutely bear out. It's $655 plus the homestead in Narragansett. That brings it down to about a little under $5,900. And Charlestown is $6 even with their fire department. So same thing as Narragansett. And we're $1,105 plus roughly $300 for a $500,000 home. The numbers match. Frightening. So please, they've got to play hardball here. And I know it's not going to be easy, but the money that the school committee is looking for, it's all up at the state of Rhode Island. Because if you want to go through now, look at the 26 numbers from RIDE, what cities and towns get. Providence is getting almost $300 million. We're getting 5.9 million, call it. They have 8 times our school population at 19,500. We've got 2,500, including the outer districts. They're getting 50 times the money that we're getting, 8 times the population, and they've been getting that every year for the last 10 years. And we're not getting our share back. It's unbelievable. We're absolutely getting screwed.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? All right, we're going to move on to the town manager's report.
Are you going to talk about the school building project at all? Again? I don't know if you had something to add.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. I have a couple questions that later.
Okay. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. We had to add one at the end that came in a little late, but it needed to be addressed on the Mr. Santilli's email regarding the mass gathering. That got added. So B is Noise Farm Park Open Space Management Plan by request by Councilwoman Bergner. And Mike Stack is here to explain what the status is of that.
Good evening. So as you recall, in last year's budget, you allocated funds to move the open space plan at Noise Farm forward. We've taken that and initially followed the plan's next steps back in the fall, and were unsuccessful in securing vendors to do those next steps. So we regrouped and said, how can we go at this a different way? And basically we start to finish, put the whole project out to see, put that out to bid to see what we would get back. And then from there, we also asked for basically a menu so that depending on how much it costs, we can chip away at that and also give you folks a realistic number of what it would cost to implement that plan and finish that project. So those bids, we actually had to extend the bidding period because we're struggling getting companies to bid on it, but we did successfully receive some bids when it closed last week. We'll be evaluating those this week and hope to bring a recommendation forward to you folks after that.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any questions?
Is there a particular reason you can identify why you had difficulty getting vendors to bid?
So some of it was that a couple of the vendors that were recommended as next steps had transitioned to either they were sold or one of the principals left, or there was a myriad of reasons on that initial part. And then I think, as we've seen with some of the other projects that were discussed early on with ARPA and things of that nature, these firms, they're so busy, and on the scale of projects that they want to dedicate time to, this one's pretty small. I'm not saying cost-wise it's small, but you know, it's a small parking area and a trail development versus an Old Mountain Field or a Main Street redesign or whatever, you know, that they're also vying to get those projects. So we were successful. We have two vendors that have done work with the town. The proposals initially look positive, so I'm optimistic that we'll have some good information to bring to you shortly to make a decision on.
So just for context, the town bought this property in 2006. It's 250 acres, and it's just sort of sat, right, and empty, and not empty, full and operating like forest, wetlands, whatever. In 2018, and the town started to move towards, putting some passive recreational trails. They did a little study, and then they have a master plan of what it looks like in 2019. Right? And then we all know what happened, 2019, 20, COVID, whatever. So my goal in bringing it forward is maybe on the 20th anniversary of purchasing it, we could open up Trail A or some trails or something, right? So to have a goal, if we didn't push to move, to develop this piece of property and put snowshoeing or walking trails or birding trails or whatever, we wouldn't do it. So that's where I was, when COVID happened, a lot of people went outside and did lots of things outside. This is on 138. It's a pretty piece of property that could be very nicely done. So I'm just kind of pushing because I feel like when we buy something, nobody thinks that 20 years later we're going to do nothing to it. So that's the backstory for me. So thank you for the update. I'm going to put the energy out that someone's going to pick it up and we'll get to see some progress, and hopefully maybe 2026 is a realistic goal, maybe?
We'll have answers for you shortly on the scope of what is attainable with the funding that was allocated, and also what it would take to do the entire project to completion, so that you folks will have hopefully all the information that you need to make the determination on how you'd like to move forward. Okay. And we'll work, as quickly as possible to get that information to you. We will be meeting this week to evaluate those bids that came in at the end of last week.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mike.
The next item is a update on the continuation from January 27th meeting on mixed-use zoning, Old Tower Hill Road, and that'll be Jamie Rabbit.
Thank you, Mr. Manny. Again, I'm here tonight to give you a brief update. We're still in the process with Able City East, working with the planning board. We received a final draft that was distributed in late January to the planning board. Council members received a copy of that 207 or 8-page document. I hope if you've read it, you had lots of enjoyment. That document is comprised of approximately 130 pages of text and another 70 or so pages of regulations. We do have Jason King from Able City East coming to the planning board tomorrow night in a remote setting to discuss form-based code and the regulatory aspects of that code. But I just can remind everybody that our zoning regulations are in essence the DNA of the town's land use development. And some developers may tell you that that DNA is slightly broken or a little amiss, and this is one of our attempts in one of the sections of town to modify that DNA so that we can have a more predictable outcome as it relates to development. Your traditional zoning code just basically sets lot size and setbacks, building height, but it has no articulation on how you want that built environment to appear. And again, the form-based code, through this analysis that we've undergone in the last year, is an attempt to do that. One of the things we'll kind of look at after tomorrow night's meeting, and I think I've mentioned this before you, whether we need a slight contract amendment with Able City East to further refine the regulatory side of that. Our original contract with them is to give us a rough draft of that regulatory code. And again, we may need a contract amendment based on how in-depth we go with the planning board tomorrow evening and what that final regulatory document will look like. So I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Jamie. Anyone? Go ahead.
I haven't been through the entire 207-page report, but I did start in on it. When you talk about the switch to form-based code, are we talking about just the multi-use zone, the overlay, or are we talking the entire town?
Right now, and our only intention was to look at the Old Tower Hill Commercial Highway. There was no intent as part of this process to go town-wide with it. It was kind of our toe in the water. If the community sees it well received, as we go through our regulatory evaluation and potentially updating, we could look at form-based in more areas of town. Again, it potentially gives us a more predictable outcome.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Jamie? All right, thank you, Jamie.
Okay, and again, thank you for your support on moving projects like this forward. Thank you.
Excuse me, next item is the year-to-date budget report as requested by Councilmember Bergner. That'll be by Brian Sylvia.
Good evening. So I provided hard copies of the report I prepared at the end of last week. If you want to just flip to the second page, that is revenue. Along the top, you'll see the revenue budget for, and this is that revenue budget that you reflected there, just under $77 million. That is all property taxes. So that is current year taxes, that is interest on taxes, prior year taxes, and any pilots. I will say, as we've seen, we've talked about it at last year at budget time, current year taxes have been very strong. I think we're about 57% for real estate and 62% for tangible, which again, being that we're halfway through the year, those are very strong numbers. Where it's getting pushed down a little bit, we are, as we're collecting more in the current year taxes, is less available in the prior year taxes. So I think we're at about 25% of our budget so far on prior year taxes, because again, we're collecting that much more in the current year. That's something we may have to address come budget time, just so you're aware. As we're moving the needle up on the collection rate, we do have to take into account that we'll have to push down prior year taxes. I just wanted to note that while speaking about this, but again, overall, being that typically the first quarter is the strongest quarter. You do have residents that will pay in full for the year, so that is always the strongest quarter. Fourth quarter really the smallest, but again, halfway through the year, two collections through the four, and we're at 56% collections. That's a solid number. I mean, nothing to be concerned with there. State aid is, again, we're at about 60% received to date. Licenses, permits, we're just under 56%. Operating transfers in, those are transfers that we receive in from, why am I drawing a blank right now? We receive money in from the Guild and Recreation Center for facilities department, doing work in those facilities. Those are a year-end transfer that we'll be doing. They'll be completing that transfer at year-end. That's an entry in the finance department. Department revenues is at 75% for the year. Again, very strong. Some of those are seasonal, but that's, again, very strong. Revenue from investments. Just to clarify here on this line, that is the revenue we have received. There are two parts to that I just wanted to note. We do a year-end entry that is a reclass from the prior year for interest. That is a GASB 31 charge. So that is a one-time, it is revenue, it was to our benefit this year, but that's $369,000. So of that, what you're seeing there, of the $1,257,000 in revenue for the year, $369 is for that one-time reclass from the prior year's interest. So actual revenue from investments this year, halfway through the year, we're actually at $887,932, which again, given our budget is $665,000, very strong. We're off a little bit from last year. I think at this time last year we were at $1 million or $1.2 million. So we're a little bit off, but again, very strong. Miscellaneous revenue, much of that, actually about $550 of that is a year-end transfer that will be done by finance along the lines of, again, transfers from other funds. And then the transfers out, that is, the bulk of that is the transfer to the School Department for Education. That's about $56 million. You got about $1.2 million for debt service fund, and the balance is transfers out for the Recreation Center and Senior Center. And then finally, fund balance, we have not taken anything yet. One thing I wanted to note on this, I feel like this is a little, I've been struggling with this a little bit. I feel like this is a little deceiving that we're showing 70% of the revenue collected to date. If you take all of the revenue, so subtract out, don't look at the operating transfers out for a moment and just the revenues of the town. Total revenues for the general fund is $90,955,078, of which we've collected $51,791,000 to date, 56%, which is much more in line with what you'd expect to see. And then the transfers out budget, you see there is at 49% or where we should be. So it does work out to 70%. It looks very odd to see that we've collected 70% of the budget revenue for the year. Revenues collected, all revenue lines is at 56%, and our transfers out are at 49%. And when you add them together, it is 70%. But I feel like it's a little deceiving. I'm going to add a line on that. To have the subtotals between revenue and the transfers out, just because I think that creates a better, clearer picture. Questions on revenue? Okay.
So the investments, they're not doing as well, but you didn't, the bulleted list on the front page, you actually are outperforming what you budgeted?
Oh, yeah,
Even though
much.
they're not doing as well as last year?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I have a question about, this is exactly what I was hoping to see. So what is the first thing, the legal staff?
That is, we encumber the budget for the year for legal staff. And I think we had some, was that labor related, I think, due to contracts? We moved some more money in. So funds were transferred in. So that has been, even though it says a negative there was a revised budget. There was a transfer in for the funds for that overage.
Okay.
And on the expense side, to walk you through anything that is, I kind of highlight anything over, say, the 60% range that, is a little bit out of, you could consider a little bit out of whack. So going down the line after legal, you see post-year audit. Obviously, our audit was due 12/31, and that work has been completed and they have been funded. So that's why that one you're seeing at 99%. EMS is at 61%. You'll see going down at the bottom of public safety. Again, they have a new contract and they're a little bit higher than anticipated, but again, given where they are with the new contract, that is not bad. And finally, we have a few in leisure services. You see athletics, aquatics, and leisure services program. Each of those are, again, those are programs where the funds have been committed and obligated because the services will be, I think those are a lot of professional services that have been encumbered. And those are programs that are run seasonal, so they do go hot and cold depending on the season. And then finally, municipal insurance, that line is paid in full. We pay half in July and half in August, so that's been paid in full since August. And finally, workers' compensation also, we pay a very large lump sum in the summer. And then the contributions to the HSOA, and they've been made to date. So overall, on the expense side, just over 52%, 52.63% for the year. So trending, I guess, in that sense, a little bit over, but at the same time, we have a lot of expenses that do not go 1/12 every month, so that will skew things. So we're really where we should be at this point on expense, and probably a little bit higher on revenue. I am at this time, as part of the budget process, going through a year-end projection. I'm not there yet, because that's really painstaking, going through every line. Where are the vacancies? When do we think the vacancy will be filled? And working with departments on the expense line. So we're not there yet, but that's a painstaking process that we are working towards. But again, at a glance, I don't foresee any issues with the current fiscal year.
All right, thank you, Brian. Any questions? Go ahead.
Just a couple on the revenue budget, Brian. Can you give me an idea of how you're categorizing state and federal aid, the second line?
Yes.
What's included in that?
So that is not the school housing aid. That goes to our debt service fund, for debt service. So that is meal tax, that is hotel tax, that is the motor vehicle reimbursement, that is the tangible tax reimbursement. There's a corporate tax. We got library aid, library endowment, and I think we've gotten about $20 so far in cannabis revenue. That's about it.
That's funny.
And the federal?
We got $8,000. $8,000.
From the feds?
Do you remember what that's for?
I don't off the top of my head.
All
No.
right, that's fine.
Can I ask you a question about the zoning board and the planning board line items in the summary report?
Sure.
Is that their stipends? I know that there are some boards and commissions who members get
Yes.
a stipend. So just, how could the planning board only expend $1,000 if those incredible people work hours and hours?
They're funded when it's submitted. I couldn't speak to, I don't know.
And the zoning board, the zoning board of review too. Would they, those, I just know that they get stipends.
They do get stipends. That's right. They're paid by the meeting.
Right.
Thank you, Luke.
The planning board.
How much?
The
Each
planning
member?
board?
These numbers don't add up then.
Right.
How many members are there? 9? 7?
7 members of the planning
How
board.
many meetings have they had fiscal year to date?
100,000. I mean, the hours, probably like 7, 6, 8,
Yeah,
twice a month. So that,
I'd have to check with the department on that. I don't know if they're current with their submitting payments.
we raised the planning board stipend a few terms ago because of the amount of time.
If we got paid $75 a meeting.
So, well, I just was curious about that, the planning board, the zoning board. I mean, I see the council, those either are, that's not our contingency budget, correct? Where is that represented?
Contingency is in under general, on the last page of expenses, general operating expenses, there's a fund contingency.
Hold on, second page. What is that? Yeah, it's 40 for the planning board. Where is the
On
fund contingency?
Correct.
So there's $218,000 in the town council contingency?
That's the that's the funding contingency. Is there another contingency? I'm not aware.
Well, I feel like I've been around a long time and I thought it was $60,000 and not 218.
That was increased this year due to the 3 contracts that were not settled at the time of the budget adoption.
Oh, I see.
All right.
I'm not following that. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but it's not computing in my head because,
That contingency fund includes more than just the town council contingency.
right, but you've only expended out.
We haven't moved the funds around. Funds will get moved to other departments. We still have one contract that has not been settled yet, so we will repurpose those funds within the budget once everything is settled.
Just a high-level question. Was this difficult for you to create, and would it be possible that going forward, maybe you do it more
Absolutely.
frequent? I don't want to add to your...
No, this is something I spoke to the manager about recently. I think this is something we should be doing.
Yeah.
You're all aware we're going to be going to Moody's for the high school bond.
Yep.
One thing they want to see in their checks is that this body is brought up to speed regularly on the financial well-being of the town. So we will be doing this on a going forward basis.
So is it reasonable to expect it once a month, or is it not reasonable to expect this to... You don't need to present on it. You could just send it to us. I don't know, would it be helpful for anybody else to have this?
Yeah, if you can do it once a month, if that's too frequent, once every 2 months. I mean, it's certainly relevant when we get to budget discussions, because how we're doing year-to-date impacts decisions we make for the budget to take effect the subsequent fiscal year.
How about if I meet with Brian tomorrow, we'll discuss what's most feasible. I don't think you can guess at this point what's 1, 2, or 3 months, right, Brian? I mean,
Generally speaking, the first couple months of the year, there's not a lot of activity. Those are probably quarterly, and then we'll talk however you want to go forward.
So this is through what date? Today?
December,
Okay.
halfway.
All right, and when we talk about operating budget, it'll be March? So
Yes.
maybe we can get something through March then?
Yes, that's the
right.
plan. We're working on a year-end projection now, and yes.
So maybe it is December, March, and June? I mean, or June, July, or whatever, I don't
So
know.
that'd be what, quarterly? Yeah,
I
quarterly.
think quarterly would be, give you a very accurate shot.
Yeah, all right, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This
Thank you,
was
Brian.
something I wanted to have, thank you.
All right, there are 2 items left. One is not on there, but I would, before we go to goals and objectives, Mr. Santilli is here. If we, just to refresh everyone's memory, back in December 14th, I believe it was, there was a unruly party on 280 Pond Street. Mr. Santilli wrote a message to the council. It was addressed, and a couple of meetings ago, and it was brought on for future discussion. So the chief of police is here with some recommendations I'd like to present to the council.
Can we add, excuse me, I just want to, before anyone goes any further, can we add to the agenda discussion of the unruly gathering ordinance?
Motion to add.
We got a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. And Mr. Santilli's here, correct? Yes, sir. Thank you.
So we're here again to speak about the unruly gatherings, and we first brought it to your attention shortly after the disturbance on Pond Street. This was the second time that we had been at that residence. On the 18th was the most recent occurrence. When I came to the council, my recommendation is there are a few loopholes that we brought to your attention. I've spoken with Mr. Ursillo about it. One being the unruly gathering statute has it restricted hours, so 5 or more that gather after 10 p.m. and go into 6 a.m. So I would look to strike that, have that an unruly gathering could happen at any time of the day, because we're seeing a lot of these large gatherings from URI students off campus housing are happening in the middle of the day. Frequently when we do go, they are broken up due to underage drinking, and the renters are charged with the social host laws because of the underage drinking that's detected there. But I think there is really a shortfall within the unruly gathering, because there's not too many occasions that we're really enforcing the statute as written between those hours of 10 a.m. and 6 a.m. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I know President McAtee raised the issue as far as weddings and other large type of gatherings. I think, again, these are unruly. These are disruptions amongst that are coming from complaints. These aren't
Chief, I'm not sure that I mentioned those concerns.
It was me.
Yeah, I think
I mentioned concerns relating to police discretion as to what an unruly gathering is.
I think there was some concern as far as which parties we're going to and how it could be affected. And I believe you did state that weddings or other type of large gatherings, but
I made no
think the big
mention of
one-
weddings or similar large gatherings, just to be clear.
Okay.
But go ahead.
So, again, these would be coming in as complaints, and just getting back to the point is to look at the hours of operation. If we could strike that, I think it would help us in these situations moving forward. Secondly, we touched upon the mass gathering permits. So those are set at 500 or more, if you were anticipating 500 or more guests. But there is no enforcement in the event someone doesn't file a permit. So oftentimes people come in front of you and request a permit for gatherings that they expect to have 500 or more. But we're not going to hear from college-age students that are coming, having a party. That would be another area that if we had some teeth, where if someone had a large party, 500 may be a high number that we're putting that threshold on. But if they had a large gathering, they didn't file a permit with the town, police could come in, summons the owners of the property or the renters of the property in front of the municipal court to be heard regarding it. So those are two recommendations. As far as notice, we currently, when we have the unruly gathering, and especially with this one on Pond Street, we did reach out to the owners. It's a couple that lives in Massachusetts. We usually send notice to them in a form of written letter, making them aware, especially where they're living out of state. But if we did pass or look to some type of order within the temporary mass gathering where they would have to file an application, maybe we could look at summoning owners, if they're from out of state, to appear in front of the municipal court and to make them also aware of what occurred.
So, Chief, I'm just going to sort of mention, my concerns initially when we talked about the potential of, amending it or taking away any time constraints relating to unruly gatherings here. I had concerns, or just wanted to get an understanding from you as chief and how officers would use discretion in determining whether something constitutes an unruly gathering. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So,
I know, I don't have the ordinance in front of me. That was sort of one of my concerns when we talked about it initially. There has to be some sort of police discretion that goes into determining what's an unruly gathering.
It might be helpful. Let me just read the definition of what an unruly gathering is. Maybe we can go from there. Unlawful conduct would be if there's excessive noise or traffic, obstruction of public streets by crowds of vehicles, illegal parking, public drunkenness, public urination, the service of alcohol to minors, illegal drug use, fights, disturbance of the peace, or any other conduct that constitutes a violation of laws and ordinances. So that's kind of the overall definition of when the police would have the ability to come in and make arrests, et cetera.
All right, so certainly some discretion, but areas that police officers are sort of regularly trained to understand and detect, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. But again, those that were just listed would be between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.
So some of those
if they're happening
enumerated-
on private property, it's not something, this isn't out in the public. So if it's happening on private property, behind fencing, in an area, maybe it is fighting, maybe it is noise that we can hear, but given the current statute or the current ordinance, the way it's listed, it doesn't fall into those areas until after 10 p.m. So when we're talking about these daytime parties, we're restricted on how much we can do because those items that he just listed don't apply.
But some of those enumerated items that Ursulo just read off there, some of those constitute, you could sort of issue a citation or issue an arrest for some of those acts that occur within a police officer's line of sight?
Correct. It was observed. Yep.
Okay. So some of those don't
But there
even...
you wouldn't necessarily abate the problem. You wouldn't shut the party down. If we see someone that's urinating in public and it's observed in the middle of the day, then that individual can be issued a summons to go to municipal court. But you're not stopping the party because of that one incident, or
Okay.
two, whatever it may be.
So you're sort of limited in what you can do if that ordinance, with that time restriction there. So if
Yes.
the party's happening at a certain time outside the realm of the ordinance, you can make arrests, you can issue citations for certain acts that were enumerated, but you can't shut down the party.
Correct.
Okay.
It's like a micro level response versus a macro level response. So,
Now what about the weddings, chief? No, I'm just kidding.
so I think removing the time is the smart thing to do, because I think we're seeing the creep of the college students come into South Kingstown. I'm just concerned because everybody has a very difficult neighbor. Everybody's got a story about, people have been annoyed by their neighbors. And I just don't want it to be too easy for a neighbor to report somebody having a barbecue and people not liking it. That's my only, I know, maybe gatherings that exceed a number, I don't know. I hate to do that, but I feel like I don't want to weaponize something for a neighbor who doesn't like that Jay's having a barbecue or you're having a barbecue or, there's two, whatever.
One possibility would be look at the way it's written now, it's 5 or more. So, again, you have, in this case, there was estimated 300 to 350.
Right.
All right, and so we can look at two different things. Should they have a temporary mass gathering permit? We'd have to lower the threshold there to bring that down. And would it be appropriate to say, let's look at 250, you have to have a temporary mass gathering permit. If we get a complaint in, whether it's noise, loud music, whatever it might be, we show up, maybe all the cars are parked legally, maybe they're Ubering in, but it's still unruly to the neighbors.
Right.
We can use the discretion, but when you have 250 people at your house and you didn't come in front of this body to ask for permission, it's really not fair to the neighbors that are
agree.
being disturbed.
I agree.
I think that option B sounds like a route that might be the safest. And I'd also like Mike Ursillo, if we could reach out to the ACLU to see if this is going to violate any future laws. If we consider changing the time of day, I feel like that could go against the First Amendment, the right to assemble. And so I just would before we considered anything, I would reach out to the ACLU or an adjacent organization to double check on that. And again, Mr. Sin, thank you for coming out tonight, and waiting for this, because I know how important it is to you, right? You don't want Pond Street to be party central or become Eastward, right? And so I think that option B would be a route that would keep it safer. But at the moment, option A about removing the time is not something I'm favorable towards, but I would check
What's option B?
What's option A?
So lowering he said option A was removing the time constraints, and option B, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, is to the mass gathering permit from 500 to something closer to 250.
Oh.
Yeah, we're confusing a couple of things. I think we want to make it clear. So there are two ordinances that are being referenced. The first is the unruly gathering ordinance. That's the one that I read the definition about what constitutes a public nuisance. So all of those things that I mentioned, those all represent laws that are kind of on the books already, as the chief mentioned, one-on-one as opposed to a big group. There's not going to be an ACLU problem with that. I wouldn't recommend going there with that. The second ordinance is the need to get a permit if you're going to have a mass gathering. And right now, we define a mass gathering as 500 or more people. So the recommendation is to knock that back to maybe, I mean, we can discuss it. 250 has been thrown out. Just so, that's probably, most weddings are going to be under 250 since we're playing around with weddings, or 300, whatever. We can talk about that. The chief's issue is, as he mentioned, it's one thing for a police officer to go to a disturbance, find an underage drinker somehow, find someone committing some offense, whether it's, assault or urination or whatever. But his force doesn't have the ability to say, this event is over. So that's the unruly gatherings, as opposed to the mass gathering ordinance, where a whole different set of rules apply.
One thing I'd like to clarify, when you're talking about option A and option B, I haven't understood the chief to be talking about pick one or the other. We could do both, and from my listening to the explanation, I think we probably do need to do both. I've got a question for Mike about procedurally. Are we looking at a motion for an order of notice if we want to do this?
So you, since this was added to the agenda, you can't do any motion. The whole idea
That's
here
right,
was
right.
for discussion to get some, you can give direction, right? I would like to be able, based upon the chief's comments and your reaction to them, I need to come back to you with something so you have something in front of you before you vote on an order of notice. But before I came to you with that, we're just getting feedback from you. What do you, should we reduce the number from 500 to some other number? Should we get rid of the time that says 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and just eliminate those hours, and therefore it would apply all day long? Based on your feedback, I'll do something and I'll come back to you.
Mike, the only other thing I'd add is with the temporary mass gathering, if they don't file a permit, there needs to be something more for enforcement. Right now,
for teeth.
We have nothing.
There's no enforcement mechanism at all right now, and the chief was recommending either he has the power to disband the event depending on the circumstances, or at the very least, we summons the organizers to municipal court to talk about fines or whatever.
So I have a question about, as I think about the mass gathering part, Sons of Liberty is the one that comes to mind. They do their Oktoberfest and they do it. So I don't want to, by lowering the threshold, it's not a moneymaker where we're trying to capture. So I don't know about being maybe businesses could be a different number and residential could be at a lower number, because I think that's where you don't want Sons of Liberty or someone doing a farmer's market or some event every time they've got to come here and do the process. Because the 500 works for our businesses and the ones who need it do it. And then maybe just the residential sectors of town, residential homes, maybe they have a lower number, because that's really what we're trying to address. We don't want undue burden on the businesses. That's my takeaway.
Is there a way to distinguish between the two, Mike?
I'm looking right now there. There is no distinguishing in the ordinance presently between commercial and private, and we certainly could divide that up. That if someone's going to have, 250 people in their backyard, that's different than someone doing
50 people at Sons of Liberty.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
We don't want
We should, if we're going to be talking specifically about weddings, so forth, and we also have a lot of short-term rentals as a wedding planner, I can tell you I've done many, many weddings in houses, not necessarily in South Kingstown, but people rent houses and then they bring 100 or 150 people in. And I think if you're renting something, a commercial thing, and you're bringing in vendors, then it makes sense to have a mass gathering permit at a number like maybe 150 or something. And then as far as my thoughts on, Mike, you read us a list of all of the behaviors that are, could you read those behaviors again?
Sure, let me go back to that.
So, I guess my point.
I have it now. I have it now. It's excessive noise or traffic, obstruction of public streets by crowds of vehicles, illegal parking, public drunkenness, public urination, service of alcohol to minors, illegal drug use, fights, disturbance of the peace, or any other conduct that constitutes a violation of any other law or ordinance.
So if this is a problem between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., this seems to be a problem to me at all hours of the day and night. So I think that for that reason, I would be inclined to remove the time constraints and just say that those things are wrong no matter when they're occurring, and that the police should have a way to deal with them.
Can I ask a little further about this ordinance, Mike?
Yes.
How to understand it, interpret it, how it's enforced? So in the event that there's it applies to gatherings of 5 or more?
Right now, it says public nuisance means a gathering of 5 or more persons between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. on any public or private property where conduct occurs that causes a disturbance of the quiet enjoyment of the public.
All right, so I just want to put this into perspective, sort of give an example so I can understand this.
Yeah.
Let's say you got a party with 6 people, all right? It's happening at a house, maybe it's outside. I don't know. Someone is seen peeing in the grass, which is not good. They should be arrested for that. But that gives you the authority, if you see it, to go to the house, shut down the party?
Yeah.
Essentially?
Yeah.
Whereas without it, all you can do is go arrest the person or issue them a citation.
And the key here is if the officer sees it, right?
Yes.
Maybe 5 is too small.
I'm inclined, if we're going to go this route, to increase from 5. What are your thoughts of that?
Oh, yeah, I think because
All right, Chief.
Could you put your mic on, Chief?
Yep. The scenario you just said, 5 people and someone urinating, there is going to be discretion there that's happening. But what we're really talking about, and why Mr. Santilli keeps coming in front of you, is 300, 350 people, and this isn't the first time that it's happened. And he's looking for assistance. He's turning to us, he's calling us, he's cooperating, and giving us this information. A lot of times, neighbors don't want to say who they are. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to start a disturbance with their neighbors, but we need more teeth to end these parties. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be arrests. And that's why I would suggest just the ability for the police to come in and say, you blew it. You went overboard, and you're bothering your neighbors, and it's causing a disturbance, and we have to end it.
Well, how high could we go? Could it be 100 or more? I mean, would that work? Seems to get at what we are trying to rid of, right?
I think, again, if you went to 100, you went to 250, it's a wedding, it's whatever it may be, it still gives us the opportunity to go there, speak to the homeowners and say, we've gotten complaints of a noise. Either keep it down or we end it. We break it up. So, I don't want to necessarily put a number. That's, you can look at that, but we're talking about these large gatherings that are happening. We're not necessarily concerned with the 5 people. I think we go to a house and there's 5 people that are throwing the football around out back and being loud. We can go there and say, we're getting complaints, keep it down. But when you have 300, it's a little bit difficult to keep 300 quiet.
I go to a party in the summer. It's called a barn party. It's in West Kingston. It's hosted by small business owners in South Kingstown. It's a big family event. Probably 150 people go. Starts around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I think that my apprehension for the time ordinance is that this kind of party that is safe but loud could be shut down. And that's the sort of thing that I'm fearful of, right? And I don't think we're the first town to deal with college, or really a college town that has to deal with this. So, Mike, is there any possible way you could look into what other towns have done?
Yes, but we probably don't want to go as far as towns like Providence and Narragansett.
Towns that are roughly the same size or just...
If I may just touch upon that, though, that would where it may be useful to have the temporary mass gathering. So if this is something that's happened every year, have the organizers come in front of you, show the plan. Are there going to be cars that are blocking the roadway where public safety vehicles aren't going to come in? Have the neighbors, so they're aware of it. Now they can say, okay, I know that they're going to have this party. What's the noise going to be? What's the plan? And then at least people can talk about it, and not someone that's trying to enjoy a Saturday and all of a sudden he looks out his window and there's 300 people having a rager. It's just, I think either you go where we talk about it ahead of time, the rules are established for something like that, and you're saying it's good, and maybe it doesn't bother all the neighbors. Maybe the neighbors are invited to it, and that can be permitted by this body. But what we're trying to restrict is the ones that aren't, that all of a sudden are established, and then we're not able to shut those down in the middle of the day.
No, I understand what you're trying to do, Chief. And again, Mr. Santilli is coming here every week, and I give you props for that, sir. You know, I'm just trying not to have other or organized events get caught in this web of what we're trying to fix, right? So that's all. That's all I'm saying.
But they won't get caught if you have a process where, so what we're trying to avoid is the pop-up party that happens with everyone on social media saying, come to such and such Silver Street at 2 today, and all of a sudden there are 300 people. That was never permitted, that was never expected, that traffic wasn't planned for, on and on. That's what we're trying to avoid. We're not trying to hurt people who have businesses or are doing, you know.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's just go
I don't
for-
think we're ready to issue a notice for a public hearing.
Oh, no, you're not
No.
going to do that.
No,
I know, but
we can't do that.
I know we can't do that
I'm taking notes
tonight.
here. I just want to put together
He's trying to draft some ideas. I think removing the time makes sense, because the pop-up Daytown party we need to have some way to address it. And I do think that I don't want to disadvantage businesses. 500 is, we don't want to lower it to 250, and then all these other businesses are like caught up in now this process that they never had to go for before. So I like the differentiation piece.
Yeah, I can work in
Yeah.
commercial.
So that's the mass
versus
gather-
private
that's the
property.
mass
Mass gathering.
Say again?
Can it be done by zoning?
I wouldn't do it in zoning, I would do it by ordinance, but not in the zoning ordinance.
No, I meant relying on, residential zone versus commercial
Oh,
zone.
yeah, we can reference the zone, absolutely.
that's what I meant.
I understand now, yeah.
And then that's what I think I would lean that way. And I think that a party like Jay is talking about, or where he goes, where 150 people, again, if there's not those triggering behaviors, the police aren't going to do anything. I mean, it's the over-the-top behavior that they have no way to enforce. So I think a party with 150 friends, while they may be enjoying themselves and whatever, it's not the same as 150 college students everywhere.
Well, if we're going to go down this route, for any way for me to feel comfortable, we're going to have to increase that number. I don't know what that number is.
Oh,
Five's no
get rid
good.
of 5. Yeah, 5's crazy. 5 is, but that's
I'm
because.
talking about an unruly gathering ordinance, which is really where this began.
Agreed, and I do agree, as your solicitor, that 5 is too small of a threshold.
Right.
So what I'll do is I'll do a little research, see if there's similar things elsewhere. I can leave that blank. We can always fill that in. Should it be 10, 12, 15,
Yeah.
8? We'll just leave that up for grabs, and we'll figure that one out.
So what's
I
going
feel
to be
like-
the next step? You're going to,
I'm going to put together some redlined language that we work into your current ordinances for you to consider. Like, I'll bring that to the next meeting, not for an order of notice, but for discussion purposes.
So I feel like your first term on the council, this Party of 5 ordinance was, remember that was sort of discussed? You vaguely remember that?
yeah.
So I feel
I think
like
I
that-
voted in favor of
was-
it, and then
yeah.
procedurally at a
Yeah.
subsequent meeting, as
Yeah.
one of the ones who voted in favor, I asked for reconsideration.
No,
I tried
no.
to get it off
Yes.
the books.
Yes.
Didn't
Because-
have the votes to get it off the books.
It
so
was
it's still there.
adopted in February of 2020.
Right,
Yes, it
because,
was, and I was
because
there.
Rory, that, if I remember correctly, I was in the audience, but it was neighbors in Kingston that didn't like what was going on right in that area, and so we were trying, it seems like they were trying to fix something that was going on there. That's how the 5.
It was actually February 10th of 2020, and here
Wow.
we are 5 years later.
Right before the world shut down. So I think 5 is too small. I think we can leave it to have Mike do some tweaking. Mr. Santilli, I just wanted to explain, the order of notice that just is, that's just for us to direct the clerk to then advertise for a public hearing, then that's when the ordinance would be changed. So it's like at least another meeting of a topic, just for your procedures of how it works. You good, Mike?
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
going to come back with, actually, Amy will be at the next meeting, because I'll be away, but we'll have a red wine version for your discussion. You can edit that, and then we can have an order of notice at the meeting after that, and then a final adoption meeting. So we're probably looking at March as the range of time.
Okay.
Okay.
Before we go to the E, could I ask Jim a question?
Go ahead.
So at the last school building committee meeting, a lawyer named Dylan, I didn't catch his last name, he's the...
Conley.
He's the what?
Dylan Conley.
Dylan Connolly, yes. I wanted to say Rodemacher, but that's not that guy. He's the school project labor lawyer.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever, does anyone know what that is? Okay, so, you? Okay, so one out of 5 of us are sure of what that is, so.
I didn't respond to that, but go on.
Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at 2 out of 5. I'm just trying to figure out who hired him, who's paying him, what does he do? Because that wasn't explained to us. So I just wanted, you don't necessarily have to do that tonight, but maybe in 2 weeks. Because as I did a little asking, and apparently there's only 2 of those two lawyers like that in the state of Rhode Island, one or the other, and how did we pick that one and who pays him?
I'll do some research on it. I know pretty much the facts, but I want to give you true
Okay.
facts. So I'll put it in the updates, and then we can, weekly updates, and then we can bring it to the council meeting if you so choose.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So it's going to bring us next to the goals and objectives. It's about 10:50 p.m. Sort of a loaded topic to take up in a 10-minute span. You guys want to continue this to the next meeting, have a work session devoted to it? Let's do that. Can we start the next meeting with a work session devoted to goals and objectives?
I could tie this all up in about 3 minutes if you want, but no.
No.
I think it is worthy of a work session. Last year, we had difficulty really coming to, yours were really good this year. Pretty much we're all on par, so. We'll do it the next meeting, is that what you want to do?
Yeah, let's do it in the work session. Let's start with it.
Motion to move item 12E. Would that be correct? No.
I don't think we need a motion, right?
No.
All right.
So mine, I looked at everyone's, and I do agree we're similar. I do want to look at the rules of conduct at the same time, just making some things that are already happening outlined in the document.
You want to combine goals and objectives and rules and conduct?
Well, we can talk about them. Do you see what I'm saying? So like, I want it to be an item so that we can say, whatever. Like, how does something get on the business side? How does it get in the communication side? You know, what's the process? We have a timer, like, you know, whatever the, you know, so that there's a little bit more structure, because there's not a lot of rules.
Yeah, that's fine. We can talk about it in the context of goals and objectives.
Yeah.
If that is one of the goals and objectives, we can certainly talk about it.
Awesome.
All right, it's going to move us to communications. Item 13A is an email continued from January 27, 2025, dated January 14, 2025, from Councilmember Wedgemont, requesting a citation recognizing Jade Bun Restaurant for its outstanding achievement and invaluable contribution as a small business. I have this proclamation here for Jade Bun I'd like to read into the record. Whereas Jade Bun, a small locally owned restaurant in South Kingstown, has achieved the remarkable distinction of being ranked number 2 on Yelp's top 100 Chinese restaurants of 2024, and whereas this prestigious recognition highlights the exceptional culinary excellence of Jade Bun and reflects the vibrancy, resilience, and dedication of the small business community in South Kingstown, and whereas locally owned establishments like Jade Bun play an integral role in shaping the unique character of our community and contribute significantly in our local economy, and whereas the commitment of Jade Bun to providing high-quality food, a welcoming atmosphere, is a source of pride for all residents of South Kingstown. Now therefore, we, the Town Council of the Town of South Kingstown, hereby formally recognizes and commends Jade Bun for its outstanding achievement and invaluable contributions to the cultural and economic fabric of our community. And be it further resolved that the South Kingstown Town Council extends its heartfelt congratulations and gratitude to the owners and staff of Jade Bun for their dedication and success, and encourages all residents to join in celebrating this well-deserved recognition. So I don't believe anyone is here tonight on behalf of Jade Bun, but perhaps we can mail this to them.
Congratulations, Jade Bun.
Yep.
Motion to approve item 13.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes. 13B, an email dated January 25, 2025 from Councilmember Alley concerning billing for the SK EMS Community Paramedicine Program. Patty, go ahead.
Yes, and I did actually forward an email from Senator Sosnowski to both Jim and Craig Stanley tonight regarding a bill that was passed last year. And so I just want to make sure that we're billing for all of the services. It's Senate Bill 2389. There would be a companion bill in the House. And so it specifies that commencing January 1st of 2025, and it's a big, long thing, but basically only those emergency medical services who submit plans that meet the minimum requirements shall be able to do that and to bill. So it's a big, long thing. And I know that our expenses for the community paramedic program, as well as for EMS, have been going up. We have a lot of great equipment. You've put this in place, and now it is, the federal government has made it legal. I just want to make sure that our state that you're going to be able to start billing for the community paramedic program, especially in this time where we are having a serious lack of primary care providers. And I think that there's a lot of money on the table, and it's really a great idea. So I want to just hear from you. And I don't know if you have all this information or if we need to continue it.
I have some. I mean, it's a huge topic. There's really two sides of this house. One is increasing the reimbursement for transporting people to the hospital.
That's not what I'm interested in.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying
right.
it's intertwined because we're trying to get that increase because Rhode Island is one of the lowest in the country. So we're on that side of the house, we're trying to increase that. Then the other side is we're trying to bill for the community paramedicine for that. And usually the billing nationwide in the program comes from two perspectives. One is hospitals or healthcare agencies will pay a flat fee for service for us to go out. We determine this is what the fee we're going to charge, and they will just pay us that fee. The other part of that is for us to negotiate with insurance companies that they will pay a portion of our visit.
So like Medicaid is required now to compensate for that?
No, they're not paying anything right now. Right in the state of Rhode Island, Medicare or Medicaid, they're not paying for a community paramedicine visit.
So then it sounds like this bill that, because the Senator Sosnowski was asking if this bill was enough to enable you to bill Medicare and Medicaid, and so what I'm hearing is that it isn't?
Well, it is. If we can get that passed, we can bill, because probably 40% of our transport patients are Medicare. The other 2% is Medicaid, so that definitely would help us to be able to bill for services, yes.
So what do we need to do? How do we?
I'm affiliated with the Rhode Island Fire Chiefs Association and the Southern League of Firefighters, and we are meeting with the legislatures. In fact, 2 weeks ago, when we had a council meeting, the Southern League met with all the Southern delegation, and they're very supportive of that. And I've been in contact with a number of the representatives over the past several years to push this. We thought we had this last year, and then it died in committee. So this year, we're hoping to really ramp up.
So we can maybe support you with that?
Yeah,
Like if we wrote...
this is critical, because what you mentioned is, especially in this area here, is people don't have access to primary care docs.
Exactly.
So we become the default, and we're
Right.
not primary care physicians. And it's a huge problem.
It's made for like rural areas, which, I mean, we sort of are, I think we're like rural, suburban, or...
Yeah, I mean, we are as far as Medicare, we're listed as urban from their standpoint, but we are in a rural area.
Right.
I do agree with you that. So, the patients referred from 3 locations. One we get from South County Hospital, Thunder Miss will refer a patient. The primary care docs will refer a patient, or internally, the 911 will respond to the calls, identify a patient needs to enter the program. So right now, everything's been paid for on a grant.
Right, but now that grant is...
The current grant ends in May, and the Department of Health is fairly confident that we're going to get more funding to go beyond May, but one of my priorities now is working with South County Hospital, and we signed an MOU with Integra with Handles Care New England to start working on a fee-for-service. So I'm in the works behind the scenes, just regardless if that grant comes through.
So what can we do on the legislative side, though? Like, I mean, because we could all write to our representatives, we can go there and testify.
That would be helpful. I mean, it would. This is an argument that I've been in position 8 years, and I've been pushing for this year after year after year, and it doesn't get through.
Could you write us a letter could you write a letter to the council, and then we'll really just hammer it home, because there's so many people in the community too that are really engaged on this issue, and this is a real world solution that could, is helping and should be helping our bottom line
we're having
too.
a tremendous impact on the patients that we're seeing. I mean, I can just speak of one example of a patient that we are dealing with, that we probably visited this patient 3 times a week and transported them to an emergency room, and meeting with the patient, finding their needs and finding resources. We haven't been there in a month, because the patient is getting seen.
Yes.
So, I mean, and, people say, well, this benefits the hospital, this only them, but it doesn't, because that truck that we're having is staying in service. And the answer is not to take them to the ER, because then that patient who doesn't really need to go to the ER is occupying a room for 12 to 20 hours. Where the hospital gets full, then we go on bypass. So now we got to take a patient to either Westerly, Kent, or Newport, because the local hospital is full. So it's a ripple effect.
I mean, I can tell you myself personally, because when I had my open heart surgery, that was when all the primary care doctors left, and including my doctor. And so I couldn't even have anybody to check my blood pressure.
Yeah.
They told me I had to go to Providence. And if you guys had been there, that would have saved me so much.
We do blood draws for patients that can't leave their home.
Exactly. Like, you can't leave when your chest is cracked open.
Correct.
Like, it's...
All right. Mike Ursullo, go ahead.
You need a motion to continue beyond 11, and then I was just going to suggest to the chief, does your association have a resolution the council could adopt at a council meeting supporting that legislation?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
You can get that.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Is there a motion to continue after 11?
So moved.
We got a motion. Is there a second? I'll second it. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you, Chief Stanley. We're going to move now to appointments.
Before we do that, can I just, what Patty said about the legislation and testifying, I did notice, I read in the paper that you met with the speaker and you talked about Champagne Heights. Thank you so much for doing that. I just didn't know about it. So that's one of the examples of, and I noticed that you testified about the homestead exemption, Jay. I didn't know about that. So if there would be a way that we could do a better way of communicating, because you're either representing yourself or you're representing us or not that. And it's just, it becomes a murky spot Like, I think both are fine to do, but not to find out. Imagine if I was doing something, and you'd be like, hello. So we need to have a little bit more either communication through the town manager or some other way, because both of those things happened in the last week, and then Patty's like, we can testify, and I want you to testify on that topic, but I don't know.
Well, we're all invited to we all got a invitation to go tomorrow for the 211. It's the
Correct, but Jay is testifying as what, as a
As an
citizen?
individual council person.
Correct, but he's, okay.
As an individual council person, Councilwoman Bergner.
I understand, but I'm not upset. I'm just trying to say, but we're not communicating that. And if I was doing something like that and then showing up in some way, you'd be like, what are you, you know? It's about working collaboratively and at least explaining where you are, especially when Roy's up with the speaker about Stampede Heights. I think it's great. I just didn't know about it until I read about it in the paper.
If you were out doing stuff, Councilwoman Bergner, I'd have faith in you. So,
I can't hear you.
if you were out doing stuff in the world by yourself, I'd have faith in you. So,
Well, that's not how that, but
Hold on,
that's a different story. So I'm just putting it out there because we're not 5 people pulling in 5 different directions sometimes. So I just wanted to say that before the meeting ends.
I hear you loud and clear. Mr. President, can I make a motion for appointment?
Yes, go ahead.
Mike Crusillo, can I appoint more than one, or make a motion to appoint more than one person at a time?
Yes, you can.
I'd like to make a motion to have Peter Swain, Richard Morrissey, and Susan Mittendorf to be on the Affordable Housing Committee, Collaborative Committee.
All right, we got a motion.
I'd like to could we add Hillary Carlson to the Library Board of Trustees and Kim Falcone to the Sustainability, and I'll second. Can I do that?
I don't know. Mike?
It's up to you. If you're all comfortable voting as one group, that's fine. If you're not, you vote against it.
There's a beep.
All right, to add those, does he have to amend his motion to include those
Well,
names? She can amend his motion?
No.
All right.
If
Right.
he accepts her amendment, we're all set.
So just to be clear, who are you trying to amend on the motion, Councilwoman Bergner?
Adding in Hillary Carlson, because she interviewed the last meeting for the Library Board of Trustees.
Library Board of Trustees, okay.
If I may, it might be a little bit cleaner in the minutes to do it by the commission, so you can do an appointment, like, say for Affordable
Sure.
Housing Collaborative, we do it that way, then the Library Board of Trustees, like, go down.
Okay.
It might just
Sure.
be a little cleaner that
Okay.
way.
No worries.
All right, we made a motion for 3 members to be
Second.
appointed to the Affordable Housing Collaborative.
Say their names again.
So the motion for Peter Swain, Richard Morrissey, and Susan Mittendorf.
I'll second
Affordable Housing Collaborative.
All right.
Anybody
We have a
second?
motion, we have a second. Any discussion? What do you got?
Yeah, just a question for Nicole. Maybe I'm not remembering this right. Didn't we have someone else to
that.
interview?
We did. Yeah.
We did. They're precluded from being appointed because they currently serve in the Economic Development Committee.
That is true, and I mean, I could check with Mike Ursullo on if they appoint him subject to his resignation to the current board he's on, so that he resigns before actually being appointed to
And
the next.
he would definitely have to do
Yeah,
that.
he can't
But
be on both.
You're right, cannot be on both.
So we have a motion and a second. Is that correct, Mr. Ursul?
You have a motion and a second.
Great.
Any further discussion? Anything?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Mr.
Like,
President?
Resolution to appoint Hillary Carlson to the Library Board of Trustees.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And Kim,
Mr. President, I'd like to appoint Kim Falcone to the Sustainability Committee.
All right, we
Second.
got a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Mr. President, I'd like to appoint Neil Murray to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right, that passes.
I just have one more brief question. If it looks right here that we have a Barry Gross wishes to be reappointed to the Waterfront Advisory Commission, and that he has an interview at the next meeting. Is that correct, Nicole?
Yeah, he just wasn't available for this for this meeting. We had a couple of people who were only available for the next meeting because they were either already had something scheduled for tonight.
And so if we appointed Sarah Mariani, the one that we interviewed tonight, to the Waterfront Advisory Commission, would there still be available, or, you know?
So the vacancy and the reappointments are separate. The vacancy means there's nobody there. The reappointment means the person is still there. They just need
To be
their term
reappointed.
formally reappointed.
Understood. Then I'm going to make a motion to have Sarah Mariani on the Waterfront Advisory Commission.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that passes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we got a motion to adjourn in a second. Any discussion? Are we sure about this? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all for coming. See you next time.
Good night, South Kingstown.